the Bible's very much like an R-rated book. There's so many crazy things that happen in the
Hmm.
book of Judges, especially, even just the way Jesus was tortured and crucified. The Bible is a very graphic book when you really get into the weeds of it. So I think sometimes the church just maybe it gets a little scared of something that looks scary and uncomfortable and even gross. But when
Hmm.
you dive into it, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not Christian just because it's graphic.
Entering the Darkness podcast. This is Colin from obviously that podcast. Dan could not make that tonight. Unfortunately, some of the weather in Michigan has been rather wonky, so I decided to take over for right now. We do have Paul Lattimer from Christcore Brethren Church in Ohio, a metal-themed church, which is, you can't get any more metal than that, right? So, Paul, let us know, kind of introduce yourself for us here.
Yeah. Hey, first of all, thank you so much, Colin, for having me. It's a pleasure
Hmm.
to be here. I
Hmm.
live in Columbus, Ohio, where we do this metalcore themed church plant. We did it from 2017 to 2022, and then we took a couple years off, uh,
Hmm.
a little bit because of COVID, but mostly because one of our members passed away in a motorcycle accident. And
Oh.
I was super bummed out after that happened. I don't know if you want to just dive straight into that, but we were in a band together. We were in a band called Ad Effectum. The guy's name was Alexander Stillia, and he was a fantastic guitarist. And we put a couple songs together, but
Hmm.
I was just super bummed when he passed. So we took a break from it, but then we started
Hmm.
it back up in March of this year because I felt like he wouldn't want the dream to die with him. So we just get together the first and third Friday of the month at 6:30 p.m. At 473 West Third Avenue in Columbus, and we do a mix of Bible study and also a lyric discussion of a couple heavy Christian worship songs. So stuff like Impending Doom, Sleeping Giant, Holy Name,
Yes.
anything
Mm,
in that umbrella, we're down to talk about it.
definitely. All right. That's cool, man. And that's actually when I first saw the thing with the Christ Core Brethren, I looked at this. I saw it like it came up on my thing when I was just looking through Facebook one night, and I was like, oh wow, this looks interesting. And I checked it out, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy's actually doing it, man. This is so cool. And then so that's why I, hit you up about it. I'm like, dude, you know what? We want to put you on here. We want to see what this is all about. You know what I mean? And it was kind of
Yeah.
so we just kind of, so that's kind of one of the things that have made me very intrigued about it because I myself, even though despite all the blood and the stuff on our logo here, it's like, really, I'm actually a Christian. That's actually one of the
Okay.
things too.
Yeah.
Despite being in like really, really dark black metal bands and stuff like that, which is like one of my, like black metal
Hmm.
is technically my weakness in a sense. But it's like, being in that kind of stuff, but I never ever, in my lyrics, had never ever, went as to the blasphemous parts of it. You know what I mean? I was just more
Hmm.
like about woods and darkness and hauntings and, things like that. That's
Hmm.
always that stuff. So I never delved into that dark, thing like that with it. But,
Yeah.
and that's the one thing that, when I saw that, I was like, oh, finally there's something for us metalhead Christians. You know what I mean? Like Christian metalheads. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's one of the big misconceptions. And honestly,
Hmm.
like I went to seminary, like I'm a certified pastor, if you will, but I'm
Hmm.
also a school bus driver, like regular guy part-time also as well. And I think
Hmm.
that's one of the things where like I feel like the church is kind of like screwed up historically of like just kind of thinking like this expression of Christianity looks different than I'm used to. And so I
Hmm.
think the church, not all churches, but I feel like some churches have maybe made the mistake of like, well, it looks different. It might look like you even said with your logo, there's blood all over it.
Hmm.
Maybe that freaks out somebody from maybe more of like a normie or a traditional church. So I never want to like rag or hate on anybody from a traditional church setting. But I
Hmm.
might just want to encourage people like just because the expression of faith looks different than what you grew up with or what you might even just like, that doesn't
Hmm.
mean that the faith is necessarily compromised. Like we can still love Jesus and worship Jesus even if it's in a different skin, if you will.
Right. Definitely. And when you mentioned Impending Doom, and I've been into those guys for like such a long time. When they released Nailed Dead Risen, and I heard that prayer, I was like,
Hmm.
dude, that takes balls to do that. That is so cool. And just how, and like the background music that came with it, just how like you could hear like a storm in the background and Brooke Reeves just doing the prayer. I was like, man, that is the most metal thing I've ever heard in my entire life. That is so cool.
That's such an epic album. Yeah, we
Mhm.
actually listened to that. I'm
Mhm.
married. My wife Michaela, she's a couple
Mhm.
years older than me. I always like to tease her and call her a cougar, even though she's just 2 years older. But I had to throw that in there for her. But and then we
Mhm.
have our 7 year old Millie and our 3 year old Asa. So the four of
Mhm.
us were riding to church together on Easter, and I was like, whoa. We got to have some themed Easter music. So we
Mhm.
put on Impending Doom's original album, and
Mhm.
just the guttural. I feel like Brooke definitely evolved in his enunciation of his
Mhm.
lyrics as he went through the later Impending Doom albums. But that very first album, like it's the most guttural, disgusting deathcore in
Oh
the best way
yes.
possible. But my wife
Mhm.
was just like, "How the heck do you understand what he is saying?" And I'm like, "That's what the lyric book's for."
Right, exactly. And the thing is too, I remember like reading something about them when people are like, so I mean, so is it like worship stuff? They say no, it's like goreship or something like that. They say like
Yeah,
goreship or
yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah. I
It
think
was
that's
a
even in one of the songs.
yeah,
Yeah, I
goreship.
think he said, what is it? This isn't worship, it's goreship or something like that. I'm probably butchering it, but yeah, goreship, worshiping God through gore.
Right,
But
exactly.
I don't know. I think this is one of our OG Christcore shirts. It's super faded, so you probably can't see, but we even
Hmm.
put a little bit of blood splatter on this as well. But like the
Hmm.
theology behind it
Hmm.
was, and for those not familiar with like Christianity fancy terms, like theology is basically just like our understanding and study of God. So the theology that we had with putting blood on our logo for this shirt was, it's the idea of like Jesus's blood is what cleanses us and cleans us. And so yeah, people might see blood and think it looks scary, but like the reality, like Christianity, like the Bible's very much like an R-rated book. Like there's so many crazy things that happen, like in the
Hmm.
book of Judges, especially, even just the way Jesus was tortured and crucified. Like the Bible is a very graphic book when you really get into the weeds of it. So I think sometimes the church just maybe it gets a little scared of something that looks scary and uncomfortable and even gross. But when
Hmm.
you dive into it, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not Christian just because it's graphic.
Exactly. I can't even tell you how many times, especially growing up in a small town in Michigan, how many times people had like told me that I'm going to hell for listening to metal. I'm thinking, dude, I'm a Christian. You know
Mm,
what I mean? I'm like,
yeah,
I don't think that the type of music that I listen to is necessarily going to, you know, negate my play or going to, take away my place in heaven when I die. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's kind of
absolutely.
like I don't think it's going to do that. You know? Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Do you remember the band The Great Commission from California back in the day?
I've heard of them. Yep. Mhm.
They are one of my favorites, but I remember. Do you remember the Scream the Prayer tour?
Good. Yep. Mhm. Yep.
Yeah,
A friend of mine
I
went to that. I didn't
remember.
get to go to it, unfortunately.
Oh, it was. I think they had like a maybe a 4 or 5 year run with it, but
Hmm.
at one of them. So this is probably like circa 2015, maybe it was 2013, but I got to meet
Hmm.
their vocalist Justin at one of the shows because he was always at the merch booth to talk to people. But he would always like say like, and they even had like tank tops that printed it, but it said you're not going to hell for your tattoos. And I think that's just like such an important message because like I feel like so many like hardcore kids and metal kids, like they've been told by some sections of the church like if you look different, if you act different, like you're not welcome. But that's so contrary to what Jesus's heart actually is. Jesus's heart is, I love everybody, every
Hmm.
culture, every subsect of every culture. Jesus's heart was to include everybody, not leave people out, especially not because of ink on their skin.
Exactly, exactly. And that was actually and that was that whole thing when I was growing up too, as well. They were, I tried to explain that to people all the time too, and then
Hmm.
many people had even told me before they're like, well, how can you even say that? How can you even, I'm like, well, because, I mean, people have different interests, but just because I look like this with the beard, like this is probably the most metal thing on me is the beard, but it's
Mm,
like, just because I have the beard, at one point I had it like down to here at one point, but,
nice.
it was like, just because I look like this doesn't make me, a bad person or somebody who wants to go, sacrifice goats, to Satan or something. It doesn't make mean I want to go do
Absolutely.
something like that. I happen to have caught the metal bug very early when I was young, and I've
Hmm.
never ever lost it. And then that's just the thing I
Yeah.
try to explain to people.
Yeah. What were some of the gateway bands that got you into it?
Surprisingly, and this is going to sound cliche, Metallica and Pantera.
Okay,
And
nice.
it's an interesting thing because when I first heard them, Metallica, for instance, when we were at my buddy's house. We were like 6 years old, 6, 7 years old, something like that.
Hmm.
He had this old Coca-Cola like radio, right? And
Mhm.
we were listening to our favorite radio station from Lansing, Michigan called Q106. That was the rock station back then. It
Okay.
still is. It still is. And one of the many in Michigan. And I remember hearing this riff for Cemetery Gates.
Hmm.
And then, I heard that it's just that part, yeah. And then I remember thinking, like, I'd only heard of the name Pantera before, but I didn't know that
Hmm.
that was them that I was listening. I'm like, is this Pantera? And my
Hmm.
friend's like, holy crap. Yeah. He's like, yeah, it is. I'm like, dude, this is awesome. And then all of a sudden, after that, Enter Sandman came on, from Metallica.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then he's like, this is Metallica. And I was like, whoa. I'm like, this is so, like after that, I was like, oh my God, this is so heavy. This is so wrong, but this is so cool. Like I love this. This is so good. I love the sound of it. And then I just kept getting more and more and more into it. Corn after that, White
Oh, I
Zombie.
loved Corn.
Oh yeah. Corn, White Zombie. Let me see. Well, Silverchair was one of the ones too.
Okay, I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, Silverchair was like a Australian, sort of like Australian grunge in a sense. Like they were at the peak of grunge, right at the end of grunge.
Okay.
They were like 16 years old when they got 15 actually when they recorded their album Frog Stomp.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, Daniel Johns, Ben Gillies, and Chris Jono, I believe his name is. I think I butchered it. Sorry about that if you hear it, man.
Yeah.
But no, it's just kind of like there was just those three guys, and they had a song called Tomorrow, and then another song called Pure Massacre. All these different songs. They're Australian, and they were
Hmm.
just like, I think it boggled everybody's mind the fact that these dudes were like 15 years old, and they were like doing like headlines and stuff. Like they were doing like headline tours and stuff after that. They were starting to like make it huge. So they were one of my gateways. Bush, of course, at one point. But again, but for some strange reason, I wanted it heavier.
Yeah.
I wanted something heavier and heavier and heavier each time. We're at around maybe 96, 97. I purchased the Cannibal Corpse vinyl album, and that was it. I was off to the races.
Now
Yep.
you're off the deep end after that.
Yep, basically. Because when I first heard Cannibal Corpse, I was like, whoa, what is this? I'm
Yeah.
like, somebody can actually do that. I'm like, wow, this is so nuts.
I saw them for my first concert that I ever went to was
Mhm.
Rockstar Mayhem Fest in 2009. It was
Okay.
co-headlined by Marilyn Manson and Slayer.
Okay.
And 2009 for me was the year I graduated high school.
Hmm.
My daughter always judges me for the grays and the beard here, and
Hmm.
she always gives me she says I'm from the olden days.
Oh God.
But anyhow, I was like, shoot, I'm not that old, but whatever.
Hmm.
I think I was like 27 when I had her, but I don't know. She thinks I'm old. But anyhow, my first concert, I just wanted to like go check something out, and I I knew a couple bands. Like I was big into like Disturbed, Manson, and then In Flames, and then also
Oh
Metallica
yeah.
were kind of the ones I was listening to at first. But I was like,
Hmm.
shoot, I had always like heard friends talk about go to concerts, like going to like Lil Wayne and stuff, which is obviously very different than metal.
Of
But
course.
I was like, I heard them like have all these like fun stories of concerts they went to, but I had never gone to a concert. So that summer after I graduated, I was like, shoot, I'm going to a concert. I don't really know even how to find a concert, but I just was like, well, I listened to these bands, so I searched them, and then I came across Rockstar Mayhem Fest, and I was like, that looks amazing. So I went
Hmm.
to that, and then just seeing all the opening bands. So that's where I got into like Trivium, Whitechapel, saw Cannibal Corpse for the first time, and I was like,
Hmm.
this is incredible. And then that just hooked me, and I started like looking up their local shows, going to their shows after that,
Hmm.
and I was off the deep end as well. And that's kind of honestly what started the bridge of like I grew up like going to Christian schools. I was in a Christian home. I would
Right.
kind of consider myself like more of like a nominal Christian, if you will. Like
Hmm.
this is what I know, but it wasn't like I wasn't like super serious about it. But then honestly, like I went through a rough breakup with my high school girlfriend, and
Oh
I was like
yeah.
super depressed after that. I feel like a lot of us have that moment in our life. But I was
Hmm.
just really struggling with like all the like hopes and dreams I had. Like I was putting like all this faith in a person, and then when this relationship didn't work out, I was like, well, the things that I'm trying to aspire to aren't really coming to fruition. Maybe I should
Hmm.
like give Jesus a little more of a serious chance and try faith for real instead of just
Right.
nominally and saying I'm a Christian because I grew up that way, but like really giving Jesus more of a serious opportunity. And so then when I kept going to concerts, like that's when I started seeing bands like there was this, I think it was like Winter 2010 or 2012 or something like that.
Hmm.
Do you know Winds of Plague from California?
Oh yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
loved them back in the day, and they were one of the few bands that like threw in like the keyboardist at the same time. And so I just remember like anything that was like a unique twist like that, like really caught my attention. So my college roommate and I went to college at Ashland University, which is like halfway between Columbus and Cleveland, Ohio. And my roommate and I, we were going to this Winds of Play concert up at shout out to Peabody's, rest in peace. It was Peabody's. Did you
Peabody's.
ever drive down to Peabody's? That probably wasn't too far from you.
No, I'd never been there, but I have a buddy who's in the band Along Came a Spider. John Kalo, he's one of
Oh
the
yeah.
yeah, yeah, he's
I've seen them at Peabody's. I don't know any of them
mhm,
personally, but I've seen
their
them
bass
play before.
he's their bass player.
Oh, okay.
John Kalo. Yeah, he was in a band in Michigan called Toilsome, which was my friend Ben's band. And that's how I knew John. And then
Oh,
then I,
okay.
then I then I heard that he ended up going down to Ohio and getting into Along Came a Spider. And I was like,
That's
"What?"
incredible.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then so yeah.
I don't want to say for sure. I feel like it might have been Mushroom Head that they opened for. I could be wrong on that, but I don't know. I remember Mushroom Head was always really good about like having like different local bands open for them. But yeah, at some point I know I saw them at Peabody's. I just don't remember who for. But anyhow, my buddy and I we were going down to see Winds of Plague in Cleveland, and I had never gone. I didn't even really know Christian metal existed. I just was
Mhm.
familiar with the secular bands that I liked. And so we went to this Winds of Plague concert, and I would always look at the merch before the concert would start, and
Mhm.
I was like, shirts should be, first of all, I miss when shirts were $15.
Of
That
course.
was the glory days. Now it's like
Mhm.
35 or 40, but you got to do what you got to
I
do to
know.
like stay on the road. So I'm
Hmm.
not like, no disrespect to it, but just little nostalgic for those lower price t-shirts back in the day. But anyhow, I saw one band had red t-shirts instead of black t-shirts, and I was like, what the hell is this? This isn't okay. Can't have a red t-shirt. It has to be black t-shirt for metal. And I
Hmm.
looked at the back of the shirt and it said, "Here I am, God, send me
Hmm.
to the world." And I was like,
Oh
what is this? What is this? What is this stuff about God? And
yeah.
it ended up being a For Today shirt. And so as I was watching the opening bands, this is my first experience watching For Today. They were,
Mhm.
I know you know, but just for everybody else in case they're not familiar, they were a Christian hardcore band from back in the day.
So
So
good. So
they
good.
are incredible. Yeah,
Hmm.
their vocalist Matty Montgomery. He came out of retirement. He did guest vocals on E-Rays. One of their, I think, what was the song? It was on their Tetelestai EP, but I'm
Hmm.
blanking on the name of this. I think it was on songs like Seven Horns or something like that. But yeah,
Hmm.
the band, it's pronounced E-Ray, but and Matty Montgomery finally came out of retirement to do guest vocals on a song, and I was so
Oh, thank
excited.
God.
Yeah,
Yo,
it was just
that's
yeah, it was
cool.
just a couple weeks ago, but incredible song. But I remember during the like I was always about going into the mosh pit, just getting my aggression out because I was an
Hmm.
angry youth.
Of
And
course.
there was this one guy in the mosh pit when For Today was playing. Maddie from For Today like was in between songs and he was trying to introduce the next song. He's like, "This song's about my faith in Jesus Christ." And then this one guy right in the middle of Maddie talking, the guy from the pitch just like, "F Jesus, hail Satan." And I was like, "Oh shoot, that's a little awkward." And I just remember Maddie, calm as could be, looked straight at the dude and was like, "That's fine that you say that, but if you think you saying that is going to make us and this band stop doing this concert and stop doing this tour, you're very wrong. We would have stopped a long time ago if we were doing this for people's opinions. We're doing this because we want to, like, God is real to us and we want to worship him and share him with people." And then they just went into one of the heaviest songs ever.
Yeah. Oh
That
yeah.
just really stuck with me of like, the Bible talks about being a light in dark places. And that was the first time I ever saw it in real life. Like I grew up
Hmm.
in the church, but I
Hmm.
never had seen somebody like going to Christian school. If you like said something about Jesus or how you're a Christian, like that was like the cool thing to do, and nobody had like some people might have been like, "Oh, that's lame," but generally speaking, that was kind of the expected and normal thing. Going to that concert and seeing Maddie like stand up in some very hostile opposition, that was the first time I really saw somebody like stand up for Jesus in a dark place or in a place that like didn't necessarily want him there. Um,
Right.
and I don't know, that just always stuck with me. Like, yeah, what if the
Heck
church
yeah.
did more of that? Like going to a place that maybe Jesus isn't even wanted. And I think it's important too, you never want to be a jerk when you're like trying to share Jesus with somebody, but at the same time, like you got to like go to where people are at. You can't just expect somebody to come to you. And that's one of the things we're excited about with Christcore is like instead of just saying like, "Hey, like you like metal, why don't you come to this church that like has a completely different music style, a completely different dress style?" What
Hmm.
if we metal up the church a little bit, take the same Jesus, same gospel, and just kind of translate it culturally so there's less distance somebody has to cross as far as like the culture and what it looks like and
Exactly.
what it sounds like.
But yeah, there was actually there's a little story actually that led me actually back to God because for a while I was questioning my faith, for like
Mhm.
years. I don't know why. It was just some kind of weird thing like that. There's just like all of a sudden one day I was just kind of like, I don't even know if this dude even exists. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then there was an incident that happened. It's kind of long story short. I was really suicidal and I really kept like saying stuff like, yeah, Hail Satan, things like that. And I was really kind of like,
Mm.
just trying to get a rise out of people all the time. And
Mm.
what it was that, there was a lot of things like I seriously felt like I was being overtaken by demonic whatever it was, and there
Mm.
was just all kinds of things, and I was really depressed, right? And one night there was one time I was in this play in my hometown in Stockbridge, Michigan, and I don't know what exactly led up to this, but there was something that I just had told my friend. I'm like, look, I'm not necessarily in the mood to deal with any kind of drama today. Can we just get through this, and can we just can we just move on from this? Can we just kind of make sure that, I just want to get this done, get the heck out of here, go home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, well, I come to find out, I didn't realize because I was already late for the call time, right? I woke up 2 hours late. I was supposed to be there, and
Yeah.
then for the call time,
I'd be panicking.
and oh yeah, and so I just grabbed whatever shirt I could find, right? I didn't even really care if it smelled bad or anything like that. I just put whatever shirt I could find in a little pile that I had in my bedroom, and
Yeah.
it turned out to be Cannibal Corpse, five nails through the neck. This particular play that we were in had a bunch of kids in the play, right? And I was playing the executioner in this little thing, in this little Alice in Wonderland adaptation, right? And so you'd think that would kind of fit with that, right? But, somebody had mentioned, I'm not going to mention anybody's names or anything like this. It was a long time ago. We've already forgiven each other
Sure.
for all this stuff. You know what I mean? For sure. But it's just like this person had noticed it, the shirt, and said something
Mm.
about like, people like you should actually be in prison for that kind of stuff. I looked over at my friend and I was kind of like, well, I just kind of looked over him like this and I just kind of shook my head. And I'm
Mm.
like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go and get something to drink. And I went into the there's a little kitchen there, this little pantry thing, because it was in our town hall. We were just down in the basement, and I found this little steak knife, and I just picked it up like this, put it in
Mm.
my pocket, and what I was going to do was I was actually going to try to
Oh,
do this to
wow.
myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was misinterpreted.
Mm.
Okay, because when I pulled it, I said something to the effect of, I mean, I told you I don't want to put up with anything tonight. I'm really not in the best, in the best state. My friend's girlfriend came out and thought that I was trying to go after them, and this whole
Mm.
big thing happened. And so, long story short, I ended up going to jail a couple months later. But something happened to me in there, which was crazy because, obviously they put me in the violent offenders wing originally, but because I use
Mm.
a CPAP to sleep, right, to help me
Hmm.
breathe, they ended up moving me first to solitary for about a couple days, and then they put me into the medical unit, right,
Mm.
because obviously I have a medical condition,
Yeah. And they
and
probably didn't want that for other inmates to get a hold of and turn into a weapon. Is that the type
right,
of
turn
thing?
to a weapon and and harm me, you know what I mean? Try to
Mm.
suffocate me or do something like that. Yeah, so they put me on the thing. And so what had happened after that was I remember I called my mom. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I called her and I'm just like, and I'm sitting here crying and I'm like, I don't know what the hell to do. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Honestly, I didn't, honestly, this was not what I was trying to do. I'm like, I'm just broken. I'm broken. I don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? What the heck's going on? I'm
Mm.
so broken. I don't know where to go. And then she said, I know, she's like, I know it's not your thing. She's like, but if you pray with me, I know, like, okay, I did. She prayed with me about 3 o'clock in the morning. And then as we're doing that, I'm leaning up against this wall. Like literally, there's this big wall and a huge plate glass window, right? There's this huge plate glass window behind me. And I'm just on this phone. And then all of a sudden, and there's nobody around, right? It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. Who's there? Right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I felt like this hand on my shoulder as I'm sitting
Mm.
here crying. And then a very gentle voice. It's okay, my son. You're forgiven.
Wow.
Yep. And then I was just like, what the heck? And I stopped for a second. My mom's like, what? I'm like, I think Jesus just spoke to me. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I just heard somebody. I'm like, I'm sitting up against a wall. There's nobody out there in the hallway. There's nobody even can reach inside. I'm like, something just put their hand on my shoulder and told me that I'm okay. It was a very gentle voice. You know what I mean? And I was
Yeah.
just like, and that brought me right back. That brought me back almost immediately because in the very next day, there was an old man who was obviously with the corrections officers, and he was handing out like these little leaflets,
Hmm.
right? And this thing like called our daily bread or whatever it was.
Hmm.
Immediately, I grabbed it. I just like sat on my bed and I was just sitting there reading it cover to cover, just praying. And then it just turned me back, it brought me right straight back because I was just like, wow, dude, miracles can truly happen. you know?
That's amazing. Yeah,
It's
because nobody
weird.
was actually there, right? It was just like the Holy Spirit's presence that you were feeling.
Yeah, because I mean, like, because the other two guys that were in the unit with me they were
Hmm.
both fast asleep, and there was
Wow.
and there's no way they were behind me. There was no guards, there was nothing, nobody was there. And then I'm just like, and I was like, like what just happened? Like what just happened here? It was like I never ever thought that, I would that brought me straight back. That
Hmm.
just brought me straight back. I don't know. Like, some people told me that they're like, well, maybe you were just like thinking of stuff. I'm like, no, dude, I actually heard the voice loud and clear.
Yeah.
I heard this loud and clear, and I felt like an actual warm arm, like somebody was like rubbing my shoulders like this, And I was like, what? And I felt it. That's why I was like, right when I felt it, I was like, what is that? What is going on? You know? And I
Hmm.
even looked, I even looked to see if any of the other guys were like messing with me or something like that. I'm just like, no, they're fast asleep, snoring away. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, what is this? This is so crazy. And then it was like, and then my co-host Dan, I've mentioned to him before too that he was sort of like a godsend in a way because what happened was, everybody that had how do you put this? Everybody had pretty much shunned me, is what it felt like. They all thought that I was this weird, like psycho murderer kind of guy, murderous guy, which I was not. I never have been, never will be. And a lot of things were misconstrued. A lot of things were miscommunicated, and so I felt like I lost all my friends. And
Hmm.
then, I was always just, and like I was so cautious, but I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want anybody to see me anywhere. And I was just like, if I wanted to go somewhere to like say my buddy's house up in Lansing or something like that, I would leave at like 6 o'clock in the morning so nobody would see me, and then just go and like
Hmm.
drive around up in Lansing or something like that, and just try to find some place, maybe go to the music store, you know. But then it
Yeah.
was like, and then until I got the note, I got this message from Dan. And he was like, "Hey, dude, you were at Rob's house before." He's like, you're the bass player for that other band that I saw that was there, right? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, dude, what's up, man? And then he's asking me if I want to go and, chill with him or something like that. If he could come down to my house and chill with me, and he'll bring his guitar and his amp and everything like that. And since then, that was it. Like
Wow.
he became, me and him are like this. We're just like, we're like brothers, basically, in a sense. And it was,
That's amazing.
well, yeah, because it was like basically pulling me back from this whole thing of like, oh my God, this was a really really traumatic and bad experience for me, something that I never wished would happen. And then all of a sudden it felt like God sent him, hey, you know what? I've got you a good friend, somebody who actually
Hmm.
plays music, somebody who plays metal. You've met him before, you know what I mean? You guys have hung out,
Yeah.
you hit it off really really well. I think this guy would be good for you as a friend. And as you can see, we're doing the podcast now,
Yeah.
and we're doing all these different things. And so that was one of those things. Like I said, dude, the dude was like a lifesaver. He was one of the ones that helped me to stay sane.
That's amazing. It's so cool how God does that. Like he'll send somebody to like interact with your life. That's like the providence of God. Like God just
Mhm.
orchestrates stuff. I mean, that's what Romans 8:28 says. For in all
Mhm.
things God works all things together for the good of those who love him and have been called
Mhm.
according to his purpose. And like that's just how God moves. Like, and you might be in the deepest, darkest place and you might not even be expecting it, but God's looking out and he's orchestrating something that like we can't even imagine.
Exactly. And that was what that was. And that was where that whole, me being upset with like with that post that I put on Facebook earlier, you know what I mean? That was, it was soul crushing initially, but I mean, at first I'm like, maybe there's something else that's even bigger, in store for me. You know what I mean? Maybe
Absolutely.
there's something even bigger than that. You know what I mean? That's in store for
Yeah.
me that I didn't even realize. You know what I mean? It's just one of
Yeah.
those, I mean, obviously it hurt, I mean, it doesn't hurt as much now. I mean, I get it, but it's just like but it was, that's just the way I've always seen it, and my mom is one of those things. It was actually my whole family have all been like Christians and stuff. I was basically baptized Presbyterian. However, I became non-denominational over the years. It wasn't that I didn't believe in what the Baptists or the Catholics or the Presbyterians believe. I have my own set of beliefs, and I never
Hmm.
really subscribed to either of those. You know what I mean? I never really subscribed to either one
Yeah.
of those. I took some from this, took some from this, kind of just put it all together, non-denominational Christian, because I attend all those different kinds of ones. Like my mom being Catholic, she's from the Philippines. My wife Catholic, so I've been around that. I've been around Presbyterian. I've been around all that stuff, and I've been going to churches all my life. You know what I mean? So I'm
Yeah.
so used to all of that, and it's just one of those things that it's always been like God has been present in my life. You know what I mean? No matter
Hmm.
what, even when I thought He wasn't there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like I should share this too. Like I had a super not to like steal your story, but like I just to like speak confirmation and like I believe you. Like when you say you felt that hand on your shoulder in that
Mm-hmm.
dark moment, like when I was going through that breakup with my high school girlfriend, like we had been
Mm-hmm.
together for 2 years. It was a whole situation where like she ended up going on an Amber Alert, and I thought she got kidnapped or something. What it really was is she had ran away because she was living in an abusive home environment. So she
Mm-hmm.
ran away to a different city to live with a different family member, but couldn't
Mm-hmm.
tell me until they like got all like the legal stuff worked out. But like that
Mm-hmm.
was just traumatic for me to like this person I care about. Like I think she's kidnapped because an Amber Alert went out for her. And then we finally like find out what's going on and we reconnect and we think everything's good. So just all those highs and lows. But then when I moved to Ashland University to start college, and then she was living in another city a couple hours away, and we were going through that long distance relationship instead of being able to see each other in person, that's where things kind of started to fall apart for us. And she ended up cheating on me with another guy at her high school. And then she cheated on that guy with another dude and got engaged with him as she was like still like running the strings with me. And I was just like, well, what the heck? Like that's kind of disappointing. And so yeah, I was kind of thinking about, when you mentioned thoughts that you had, I'm kind of trying to watch my tongue for YouTube as well, but I was thinking about clocking out as well. And
Mm-hmm.
God kind of really met me in that place. And I was just
Mm-hmm.
laying in my dorm room and I was like, I'm not really interested in myself right now, but God, if you want me, like I'm here and you're welcome to have me. And when I said that prayer, I felt like a warm presence, like a hug as well. And I remember just laying
Mm-hmm.
in that bed for like an hour and it felt like somebody was holding me, even though
Uh-huh.
nobody was physically
Yup.
there. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just like felt that hug from a Holy Spirit. And that probably sounds super wacky to anybody listening to this who's like not experienced in the church, but like people talk about like is God real or not, and it's really one of those things like you can talk about the theology or like the apologetics or like proofs of the Bible, and those are all amazing and valid, but I've just always really loved like when you get that personal experience of feeling the Holy Spirit. There's really nothing that words can do to describe it.
Definitely. And it's not, it's oh man. I've that's he kind of took the words out of my mouth on that one. The kind of was like same thing. It's there's that feeling, the sensation of that, knowing that he had spoken to you or even, embraced you, which is kind of the thing was, that's like it's one of the hardest things to describe to people. You know what I mean? Because
Mm,
then, they don't nobody ever really believes in that, and it was always and I've even created a song title one time years ago, with Dan. We recorded a song. We were trying to create like a sort of a black metal kind of thing before,
mm,
but I actually subtly snuck in sort of a Jesus reference in this song in the title.
mm.
It's a song called December's Eucharist. So it was like and the lyrics were more like based upon like religion and whatnot,
Mhm.
but I sort of masked it sort of like making it sound dark. And I tried to
Yeah,
mask it that way, and it was actually pretty cool. I don't know if my buddy Marty still has it or not. I think because he had this little digital recorder and we recorded it. I don't know if he still
yeah.
has it or not. But I might have to check it. I was like 15 years ago. It was like
Yeah,
or
you
like
should you should throw it
17
up
years
on
ago.
Spotify. I'd love to listen to it.
Yeah, I'll have to check with him and see if he still has it or not. See if my friend still has it.
Yeah.
But it's like it was just like I named it December's Eucharist, and then I told him I'm like I'm like you got to throw in a little bit of you got to throw in a little bit of a shout out for it. Come on now, you got to let people subtly know this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did the same thing with my black metal band Bellisk when I was in the Philippines. What people
Mm,
didn't realize was that a lot of us too, because even a lot of the people in the scene, some of them, obviously there were some that weren't religious, but there were a lot of them that were. You know what I mean? A lot of them that really
mm,
were. Even though, the long hair and the beards and the stuff like that, we're a lot of us were really always some of us would go to church, a lot of different things like that. And so I with my lyric with was it Upon Bleeding Thrones of Winter's Death, I think it was, or was it Entering the Tombs? It might have been one of those. It was I tried to subtly throw in some other references to that as well. You know what I mean?
mm,
Um, because I have a tendency to mess these up to make it open for different types of interpretations. You know what I mean?
mm.
As whereas at the time it turned out Upon Bleeding Thrones of Winter's Death was initially about like how much I despised the president out there, but it was like how much
Oh
I
man, you
despised the
gotta be
guy.
careful with that stuff overseas.
Yeah, yeah, but it was pretty much that, and then also like like dictatorships and stuff like that. Even though it was
Yeah, yeah.
masked sort of as a gory song,
Yeah, yeah.
And like,
That's
kind of
good to
like,
have some metaphor there. We
oh
my
yeah,
my wife and I we used to do some mission work overseas in Southeast Asia. And
hmm
one of the places we went to was Thailand, and
hmm
they not to cut you off, I want to get back to your story as well, but yeah, they warned us, like our long-term missionary staff, they warned us, do not say anything negative about the king, because in Thailand that is a very high offense. And we might never fly out of Thailand if we say anything negative about the king. So it's always, we like the king, king is cool. But yeah, they warned us, like, laws can be very different. Even when we went to some countries over there, it was like you have to be so careful that nobody even like slips something in your backpack, because that's one of the things tourists will get caught for, is you might just be walking through the airport or at the border crossing, and somebody might slip something in your bag, and then they want to get it back out at the other side. But they had death penalties if you got caught, even if it wasn't yours.
back
But
with Paul from Christcore Brethren Church. We've been talking a little bit about God and metal and all these different things like that. So of course we want you to continue talking with us. So you can continue with your story, Paul.
yeah, I was just saying, when my wife and I were doing mission work in Southeast Asia, like you had to just be so careful with like what the different laws are. One
hmm
of the people on our team, she was actually from Singapore, and we didn't have the chance to visit Singapore personally, but she told us just from growing up, like even spitting on the ground, something
hmm
that I feel like is like fairly common and normal here in the United States. If you
Yep.
spit in on the ground in Singapore, like that was a criminal act. And
hmm
just, if you're ever traveling abroad, like you just have to be so vigilant and look into what are the local laws, because it might even be something like that where, like, I would never have thought that spitting on the ground would be a crime, but laws
hmm
can just be so different wherever you're at.
Yeah, it is. It's very true. And a lot of our bands too. I didn't realize some of the bands I was in the Philippines, like Soul Incinerator. I was in two different bands. I was in a Basilisk, which was of course black metal, and
Hmm.
then a metalcore band called Soul Incinerator, which I was the bass
Okay.
player for.
Hmm.
And we were one band black. Obviously Basilisk was a little bit more about like just winter and different types of things. All right.
Hmm.
Whereas with Soul Incinerator, I had no idea really about what the lyrics were about at first until our guitar player told us that we have a song called Censoring the Truth, another one called Stand Tall, Until the
Hmm.
End. We had different things like that. So then come to find out that a lot of that was very, very, sort of Rage Against the Machine-ish, a sense, in a sense,
Hmm.
kind of sort of like not that music wise, but like sort of like the lyrics were kind of like political, kind of like an FU to all that.
Yeah.
I had really no idea until I was like, oh my God, dude, I'm like, we're actually like fighting the system with this stuff. I'm like, I can deal with this. This is cool, So
Yeah. Yeah.
it was actually it was actually pretty cool. There was a lot of people that really really enjoyed it. That was a fun band. And then I ended up getting hurt. I don't know if you can see it here. There's a
Oh yeah.
scar
Is
all
that a
the way from
scar there?
here. Yeah, a huge scar.
What
Um,
happened?
2013. I was actually still in college. I went to college late. Obviously, I'm 41 now, but I went to college late. Later rather, because I'd gone a couple
Hmm.
times after high school, but never really anything serious. And then my mom, asked if I wanted to finish in the Philippines. So I'm like, sure, why not?
Hmm.
And then, um, so I was on my way back from class. We were supposed to be doing some sort of a film, some sort of a student film for one of our classes. And I was cast as one of the people. I think the bully or something. I can't remember one of the cast members. And our professor happened to be sick that day. And I remember I'm talking with a friend of mine. And and then my classmates came down. They said, "Hey, our professor, she's sick today. We can't, we're not gonna do the class today." Okay. And then she's like, but
Hmm.
just sign the paper here, and then she'll give you 100% whatever for the thing for the attendance and whatnot. Just go home. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I told my group, I'm like, yo, I'm just gonna go home and take a nap really quick. I'll meet you
Hmm.
guys wherever this is, like around 1:30, right? I never made it.
Hmm.
So what happened
Why
was,
not?
all I remember is going out the back gate of the thing. There's a little alleyway there, little eateries and stuff like that, like you have in the Philippines, a little alleyway, right? And
Hmm.
you have little tricycles and jeepneys coming across sometimes. And I just remember walking out the back, and the security guard in the back was a huge Metalhead, a huge Megadeth fan. So we'd talk about the new Megadeth album that was coming out, I fist bumped him and
That's
everything like that.
amazing.
I'm like, and I'm like, dude, I'm like, gotta listen to the new album, man. I'm like, when you get the chance, listen to it, man. It's amazing, you know. And then he's like, okay, cool. And then we kind of did the fist bump thing like that. And I'm like, hey, man, see you tomorrow. He's like, definitely. And then that's all I remember. I don't remember anything after that. I just all I remember.
Did you get drugged or what happened there?
No, I don't know. Like basically, what happened was a few days later, I wake up in the hospital. And then like
Huh.
apparent
Is it like a
but
medical condition?
no, the story is something that I was
Or you
told.
got hit in the head for the scar, right?
It was something, there's got to be something. No, the story that I was told
Uh-huh.
was that somebody had seen that, they had seen me on the ground on some street. We can't quite they don't really know if it was that I got dizzy or that I might have fallen off the back of a tricycle or something like that. But
Hmm.
I was on the ground and I was kind of doing one of these things, something like that. And
Or
then
like a seizure.
something like, yeah, but I'd fallen and hit my head,
Yeah.
I'd fallen off of something. I don't know quite what it was from what they were
Huh.
saying. And like I said, I don't know because I wasn't quite there, but I was there, but I mean I didn't know, you know. But it was like
Yeah.
apparently there was some high school girl that saw it. There was a high school behind our university.
Hmm.
And apparently this girl had actually been walking, had actually seen it and actually walked up to me to try to see if I was okay.
Hmm.
And from what I was told, and from what she told my mom's friend, was that there was happened to be somebody in this little, what they call like an owner Jeep, right?
Hmm.
Driving by, they flagged them down and they brought me to the local hospital right there, you know?
Hmm.
And then and then that girl apparently stayed with me the entire time I was there. I didn't
Wow.
know until my mom's friend Maury got there. Um,
Hmm.
because what they had told me was that uh they got this call. My mom's friend got this call um from a number she didn't even know what it was, who it was, right?
Hmm.
And then they said, hey, I had we have she saw my ID because I had my ID on my neck.
Yeah, yeah.
She's like, yeah, I have Colin's phone. He was in an accident. I found him on whatever street this was. We brought him to QC Gen, which is Quezon City General Hospital. This
Hmm.
is where you'll find him. He's in the ward or whatever it is. And
Hmm.
then my mom, my mom's friend called my mom because my mom wasn't at home. And so the
Hmm.
first number that the person called on my phone is the first number they called. It was my mom's
Hmm.
friend. And he's obviously panicking, trying to figure out who do we call to get this guy some help. And then my mom called the house where we were living at, her childhood home. And my mom's friend Maury happened to be there. And then
Hmm.
she's like, hey, Maury, can you go down to can you check QC Gen to make sure Colin's there? We actually got a call saying that he was there. Somebody called from his phone. He's like,
Hmm.
okay. He went and he's like, yeah, Gina, he's here. She's like, he's here.
Wow.
Because as soon as he got there, he said, yeah, I'm looking for a Colin Downer. And then and then they're like, who's that? And then the girl apparently jumped up and she heard him. She had my backpack and she had all my stuff in it. Like she put all my stuff inside. Yeah, it was like she had like my backpack and everything like that, and just gave it to him and left.
That was so nice of her to help you because,
Yeah, but she
some
stayed
people might
apparently.
just walk by, but that's amazing that she helped you.
Yeah, apparently from what I was told, she stayed there. She stayed there to make sure
Wow.
until somebody came. And then
Did this
he
end
said
up
when I
becoming your wife? I feel like this is where this is
no,
going. Or
no, that was
okay,
no, no,
okay.
no, no,
Just
no,
a good
no, no,
Samaritan.
no. Yeah, it was a good Samaritan. There
Okay.
was
That
like
would be a crazy story though.
no, there were a few of them actually that were there, not just her, but
Hmm.
there were a few of them that stayed. But from what I was told again, but
Hmm.
what happened was, um, he saw me. And apparently I was up, and I was up, I'm talking and I'm trying to do all that stuff. And I don't, like I said, I don't remember this at all. But he said
Hmm.
something about like the way that I was speaking, he could tell something was going on. Like maybe I'd gotten injured or something because I wasn't making sense and I was slurring really
Hmm.
bad and I was like saying all kinds of different things that he said didn't make any sense at all. And then
Yeah. Almost
and
sounds
then
like
my
you had a
mom,
stroke or something.
right, and then my mom called my cousin who is a paramedic. He wasn't on duty that day, but she said something about like, can you send one of your Lifeline ambulances can transfer Colin to De Los Santos. She's like, because if you put him in QC Jet, he's gonna die even for a freaking, like if they even suture his wound. You know what I mean?
Wow.
She's like, yeah, she's like, because she's like, get him out of there. I want him to be transferred over to De Los Santos, right?
Hmm.
And so they brought me over there, and apparently there were a bunch of MRIs and there were a bunch of different things that were done on my head, and the doctor noticed it and said something to the effect of, um, said something to the effect of, oh yeah, we need to get him on the table now because
Wow.
apparently my skull had cracked. Part of my skull had cracked because apparently I hit so hard that the skull had cracked, and this whole
Wow.
flap right here, and he had to remove it because they said there was so much pressure on my brain that had it, there was like expanding or whatever it was, had they not taken that out and relieved that pressure, I would have been like in a vegetable state.
That's a crazy close call. Like, thank God that your
Yeah.
paramedic friend like was able to like
Well, actually, it was my
encourage you
cousin.
guys to like get you transferred.
No, it was my cousin.
Your cousin, yeah.
Yeah, my mom called my cousin and asked, can you get him over there? Can you call one of the
Wow.
other paramedics and get an ambulance sent and get him over there now? You know what I mean?
Wow.
And he did. My cousin did, even though he wasn't at work that day.
Well,
He
thank
called
God
one
for
of his
your cousin.
buddies. Right, yeah, but he called one of his buddies. Was like, yo, can you go get my cousin? He's injured. Bring him over there. And so, um, and then what I found out was that it was like, I didn't know, like I didn't know any of this until I started to remember. And I remember one thing, this is kind of a crazy story, which was that when I was in the ICU and all this stuff, and they're doing all this stuff, I remember vaguely, I thought I was dreaming. But I remember
Hmm.
vaguely looking like kind of groggy like this. I'm looking over and I see these people in lab coats. I thought they were scientists, right? And I'm looking over at my arms and I was seeing all these IVs in my arms and stuff like that. And I'm like, dude, these people are turning me into Wolverine, man. I'm gonna have adamantium claws, man. This is awesome. That's how I can tell how drugged up I was, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, man, they're putting adamantium claws, man. I'm gonna be Wolverine, man. Heck yeah, And then I don't remember anything after that. And then the next thing I remember is my bass player from Basilisk, right? I
Hmm.
remember start coming to, and I could hear somebody. I could hear people talking or something. I remember I look over like this, and I see this beard protruding from this mask, right?
Hmm.
He's got this cap on, but you can see his hair, like his long hair. And I look at him, I look over, I kind of went like this, and I'm like, dude, you are the ugliest thing to wake up to, man. You know? And he looks at me, he's like, yeah, thanks, man. We miss you too. You know? I'm just
Oh
like,
man.
yeah. And then all of a sudden, like and then I remember my head hurting really bad.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, like he saw me go like this to try to touch my head. He's like, no, 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 man, don't touch it, don't touch it. He's like, what, your skull's missing. I'm like, what do you mean my skull's missing? I'm talking to you. And he's like, no, man.
Yeah.
He's like, they took out part of your skull. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then he's like, well, I mean, I'm like, how did this happen? He's like, well, he's like, I wish I could tell you, look at the other guy, see what happened to him. He's like, he's like, but it's not that way. He's like, he didn't get into a fight, you know? And then he explained to me what was going on. And I was like, what? What is going on? It was just, and then I remember after that being transferred to a room. And then
Hmm.
every single time I'd wake up, there was somebody else from the scene that was there. Somebody else from the metal scene that was there.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
like
so
all the
cool that
different
everybody
metal.
checked in on you.
Yeah, like all the, well, because what I guess one of the people out there from what somebody told me was that there was one of the was it a promoter or somebody who's part of the scene had said, "Hey, Colin, this is where Colin's at. Colin from Soul Incinerator and Basilisk is here, at this hospital, whatever. You can visit him at this and that time." And people actually did,
Hmm.
which was so
That's
crazy.
awesome.
Like I remember
Yeah.
I woke up and then there's my friend Gino. He's right there. I
Yeah.
wake up and then there's Soul Incinerator. They're all right there. And I'm just like, dude, who's gonna see me next? This is crazy. It's like,
Metal people are so good about checking in on each other. Like that's amazing how everybody came out to make sure you were okay.
yeah, they all just wanted to make sure that I'm good and all that. And then because I remember my mom would just come in, like if I'd be sleeping, my mom would come in. She's like, Colin, there's some people here to see you. I'm like, what? And then all of a sudden they
Hmm.
come in. I'm like, wow, okay. And then they were all, of course, very courteous and very polite to my mom and everybody else like that, which was very important, be sure of
Yeah.
that, you know. And they were all, everyone was very courteous and everything like that. They were all just very concerned about me, which was really cool.
Hmm.
And then I thankfully got this titanium mesh plate finally put in.
Oh, so you
And
still got metal up there?
it's yeah, oh yeah. It was actually a lot of
Okay.
fun going. It was actually a lot of fun going to the U.S. Embassy with that. Because
Setting off all the
I
metal detectors.
Yeah, because what happened was I couldn't go through it originally because I just got it done. Like I
Yeah,
already had
yeah,
all the bandages and everything on my head, and but I had like I had like another like a knit hat over it so you could really couldn't tell, and
yeah.
then but the guy ended up wanding me, and then
Okay.
and he couldn't figure out why the thing kept going off. It's like do 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 do. I'm like I'm going like this. I'm already like this already, like hands up. And he's looking at it. I'm like, and I showed him a little card. I'm like, yeah, I have a titanium mesh plate in my head. He's like, like I have a
Did he
titanium mesh
start
plate in my
knocking
head.
on it, see if it was metal?
Right. Yeah. But it's just like, because I was trying to figure out, and then that was the only other time that it actually went off, which was good. The only time that ever
Yeah,
went off. But it was just kind
yeah.
of, but I was just like, wow, that was crazy. But no, that was, and then that's pretty much what derailed my entire music career,
Hmm.
which
Did that affect
then,
your ability to play bass then after that?
yes, yes.
Wow.
For a little bit, for a little bit.
Hmm.
It was just like I
That would be so
remember.
hard to lose something that you're so passionate about. Like that'd be so difficult to have to go through that.
That hurt. Yeah, that hurt really bad. It was like one of the things that because that was one of the first things that I wanted to make sure that I could still do, right?
Hmm.
And as soon as I got home, I remember I was supposed to be resting, obviously, but of course me being stubborn, you know, I
Yeah. First
went
thing
and
you did was
actually
pick up the bass.
yep. I asked my mom to get my bass, and I'm like, can you bring it into here? Can you bring it in here? Just don't put it in the case. Just leave it here. Just leave it here on the couch. Right? Just leave it here on the couch. Just bring it in here. So I can just pick it up whenever I need to. And then I went and picked it up, and I put the strap on it and everything like that. And the second that I touched the fretboard, my hand started to feel like somebody had like started putting like razors on my fingertips.
Wow.
Yeah, like somebody was cutting my fingers with razors. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God. I'm like, oh, I'm trying to play it. And I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Like I'm trying to put my fingers on there. It just stings and it hurts so badly. And I remember feeling like there's
That
so much pain like
sucks.
this in my hands like this. There was so much pain. Like it
Hmm.
felt like nerve damage in my hands and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
then I remember setting my bass down like this, just falling to the ground crying.
Hmm.
I was like,
How long did
no,
it take until you got the feeling back and were able to do it again?
a week,
Oh,
a
okay.
week. Yeah, because what happened
That's not
was
that bad. But that
no,
still really
but
would suck, though. It'd be devastating in the moment.
right, because what happened was, I kept saying, I'm like, no, man, I've been doing this way too long. I can't let this, I can't let my, I can't let my dexterity and my, I can't let everything, I can't just all of a sudden work for everything I've worked for all these years, just all of a sudden disappear. You know what I mean? I can't
Yeah.
do that. I can't do that. And so I threw on, believe it or not, Parkway Drive, their album Atlas, and I
That's
was
one of the
like,
best.
okay, oh, it is
That
a
and Deep
great
Blue.
album. Oh yeah, amazing albums. And then so what I
Hmm.
did was I was like, okay, you're gonna play this album all the way through,
Hmm.
along with them. And I did. And then what happened was I don't know what happened. At first it hurt, right? But then I'm starting
Hmm.
to play with it, and I'm like, okay, and I'm starting to feel it is coming back again. I'm like, oh my God, the feeling that my dexterity, my fingers is coming back, everything, my
Hmm.
speed, my chops, everything. And I'm like, again, another miracle happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it was like, I didn't think it was ever going to be able to happen again. And I look up and man, I'm like, you really, really had to make me work for it, didn't you? You know what I mean? You had to
Yeah.
you had to make me earn
Yeah.
it back, didn't you? You know what I mean? But it was like,
Yeah.
but like when I did that, and then so I kind of owe it to, of course, obviously the man upstairs, God, and then I also kind of indirectly owe it to Parkway Drive as well, for helping me to kind of relearn my chops and relearn my bass without
Yeah.
without them ever even knowing me or being in the same room with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
That's
kind of owe it
amazing.
to them too. I mean, like
Yeah.
I've always, because I never ever thought that I could say that like there was a band that I was just listening to their CD that helped me to regain my dexterity in my hands and my, and my playing style, again, that I could do it again, which was crazy.
Yeah.
So that's why I've been trying to, basically talk about miracles pretty much this whole time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of miracles, I had another crazy story of miracles, kind of more of the demon casting out side of things, but so I did some mission work in Southeast Asia. I also worked at a mission base in Las Vegas for a little bit, which is kind of a wild place to work with a mission group. But we were in this neighborhood where they filmed the TV show Cops.
Uh-huh.
So the mission staff told us, don't go out after 9 p.m. only bad things are going to happen to you if you leave this compound after 9 p.m. And so my buddy Corey Smith, who's one of my pastor friends, shout out to Smoky Row Brethren Church up in Dublin, Columbus, Ohio area. But me and Corey, we were doing this summer staff program with a group called Youth with a Mission in the city
Uh-huh.
of Las Vegas, Nevada. And so essentially what we did is like if your church or youth group or college group sent like a mission team somewhere for like a week, we were
Right.
the summer staff that hosted these mission trips from different churches across the country.
Right.
And what we would do is we would essentially train everybody like here's how you can do like some non-offensive evangelism. Like we don't want to like shout at people or condemn people with a bullhorn. You know, we don't want to be yelling at people like you're going to hell. Like that's not Jesus's heart, at least in my opinion. Like Jesus loved people. Jesus spent time with people. Jesus was not here to like beat people up. Like he was here to love people.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean there's never stuff in our life that is sinful that God may want us to like transition away from. But at the end of the day, like God loves us and he cares about us. So
Mhm.
what we would teach people to do is like we're going to do this free prayer ministry. So we would wear these lanyards and go out to the Vegas Strip, and the lanyard just said free prayer. And all we would do is say like, hey, if you need prayer for anything, we got you. We're going to pray for you. And so we had a bunch of different prayer requests. We had people like asking to hit the jackpot on the slot machine. But then we also had like serious stuff like relationship stuff or healing, whatever else, whatever your prayer request. God cares about you, whether you think the need is small or whether you think the need is big. God cares about it, and we're here to pray for it. So we would train the summer staff team how to do this street evangelism. And so by the end of the summer, me and Corey were like super hyped up, like God's doing all these crazy things. Like this is amazing. You know, I know they told us not to go outside after 9 p.m., but God is bigger than that. You know,
Mhm.
God's bigger than common sense and safety. So we
Mhm.
decided you know what, we're our last night before we fly back to Ohio from Vegas. We're going to go out and we're going to evangelize the neighborhood where they filmed the Cops TV show in the
Oh
middle of the
no.
night. So we leave the compound. We don't tell anybody. We were like, what were we like 19 or 20 years old at the time. And so we're like, we'll be fine. God's got this. Um, and he did, but it was a little dicey. So we go out, we're like, let's find somebody. So we're praying, we're asking the Holy Spirit to lead us. God highlight somebody for us to talk to. Where should we go? So we're walking around and we see a guy in a wheelchair on the other side of the street, like by the bus stop, and we're like, well, Jesus healed people in the Bible. Let's go pray for the guy in the wheelchair and see if God wants to heal him. Sidebar from that, when I was doing my Southeast Asia mission work, we did
Mhm.
see somebody who was paralyzed be able to stand up and walk around. I know that sounds crazy, but like
Mhm.
God can still heal people
You
today,
can.
but
Mhm.
he doesn't always do it every single time in the way that we might want to see it happen. It actually talks about in the Bible the goal of a healing was to like prove God's power. It wasn't like the ideal thing. It's amazing
Mhm.
when physical healings happen, but the idea of it is like the real miracle is when God like saves somebody's soul and brings them into relationship with himself. So I'm always down to pray for healing. Doesn't mean it's always going to happen, but we can always ask and then see what God's going to do. So flashback to Las Vegas, we're we're like, oh, let's go see if this person in the wheelchair is going to get healed. Let's go pray for them. On our
Mhm.
way to cross the street to that bus stop, we noticed this other couple arguing, a man and a woman. And so I look at Corey and we're like, oh, well, shoot. We just kind of made the assumption a man and a woman arguing. It was kind of ignorant on our end. We just kind of stereotypically assumed man and woman in an argument. It's probably the guy's being abusive. Let's go save the girl. Let's go
Mhm.
save the girl from this guy who's fighting with her. So we walk over. It turns out the woman was really the one who was antagonizing the man. But
Mhm.
Corey started talking to the guy. I started talking to the woman, just trying to see what's going on. And we're like, hey, we've been doing free prayer ministry all summer. So we're just like, hey, two white guys walking around in a dangerous area in Las Vegas,
Right.
Nevada in the middle of the night. You guys need prayer for anything? So we're talking to them. Corey's praying for the one dude. I'm thinking he's like leading him to Christ or something. And then I'm talking to the woman, but then this woman gets this evil look in her eyes and she like grabs my shirt and like twists it and pulls me forward. And then she starts like reaching behind her back. And then the moment of clarity. Oh my goodness, I have made a mistake. I should not have come out here this late at night
Yeah.
in this neighborhood. And so I'm like, I should probably praying with this guy and I don't really want to like interrupt him in his ministry, but
Uh-huh.
I also don't want to die. So I'm just like looking at Corey, looking at the woman. It feels like an eternity. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden, Corey finishes up his prayer. Sidebar, this is why you need to pray with your eyes open so you can see what's going on around you. As soon
Right.
as Corey opened his eyes and sees this woman grabbing my shirt and reaching behind her back, he looks right at her and he says, "Be silent in Jesus' name." And the woman just lets go of my shirt and she turns around and walks away. I've
Oh
never
wow.
before had an experience where I feel like I saw a demon get cast out.
Uh-huh.
Um, I mean, maybe in India a little bit with some of the churches we visited, they were praying and trying to cast out demons as some people, but
Hmm.
that was the only one where like I was involved. It felt like some sort of demonic thing. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But as soon
Uh-huh.
as Corey said that, "Be silent in Jesus' name," she let go of my shirt and walked away. And
Oh man.
shout out to Corey and shout out to Jesus because that was a little dicey there for me.
Yeah, oh yeah, I would imagine so. But you said you've been to India then, right?
Yeah, yeah, we went to India. We went to like five different countries while we were over there.
Oh man, India. There's actually if you look at the metal scene there, those guys are they got some crazy metal there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What is that instrument? I want to say like sitar or something. I've heard some like
Hmm.
Indian metal bands that like mix in that. What is
Hmm.
it? Sitar is that what it's called?
Sitar, yeah,
Yeah,
sitar.
yeah. I've heard some bands that like I want to like give people shout outs, but just in the heat of the moment, I'm blanking on names, but like that's so cool. Like when I mean, going back to like what I liked about Winds of Plague with like when they mix the keyboard in,
Huh?
if a band can like spice it up and do something just a little bit different and like break out of that like copycat core, type of thing. Not that that's
Yeah.
bad, but like yeah, when you spice it up with like something different, like that always catches my attention.
Hmm.
But yeah, we were in East India. We like traveled. We started in Kolkata, and then we like traveled down and ended up in Hyderabad.
Oh man. No, there's a few people that I had been in correspondence with, that was in that are in India, of course. One of those actually appeared in that documentary Global Metal. One of the people that I actually
Oh,
reached out
okay,
to, yeah, he was in one of the bands that was featured in the India segment there, and he was
okay,
really cool. Yeah, so I got to talk to some of them. I've got to talk to some of these people. And it's like, and I've been noticing that, like, I mean, they're just killing the scene with, they're just tearing it up in the metal scene, for like Indian
yeah,
bands and stuff. We were supposed to have a band called Gut Slit that was on here, but we just
okay,
couldn't. Yeah, they're from India, but they couldn't. We couldn't coordinate the times because India's so far ahead. You know what I
oh
mean?
yeah.
And so it's like we couldn't coordinate a time, unfortunately. But they were down to do it. It's just I guess it just didn't work out. You know what I mean? But it was
Hmm. That's
but
hard.
they're
What is that like a 14-hour time difference or something?
something like that, yeah, yeah. Gut Slit, but they're really good. There's like a death metal kind of, uh, was it Indian death metal, something like that. Really, really crazy stuff.
I'll
And
have to check them out.
oh yeah, they're really good. They're really good.
I'm gonna write them
And
down
it's
while you're talking.
all
Gut
right,
slit.
yep. And there was, and then of course, obviously, check out a lot of the Philippine bands too, man. We got there's tons. There was what else was it? Descant Got those their singer Lou Bell was the
Hmm.
first guest that we had on this channel. She's really cool. She's the one that you would
Okay.
never. She's one of those ones that you would like if you were to meet her on the street, you would never think that she's in a metal band
Hmm.
until you see her on stage and you're like, what the? That's coming out of
Yeah.
her. Yeah, that what is
Yeah.
coming
Is
out
she
of
the
her.
vocalist?
Yeah, she's their vocalist. Yeah, and that's
I
the thing.
love when you get a female vocalist because like again with my love of like let me see something a little different like yeah
Yeah.
like Spirit Box, Arch Enemy, like I
Mhm.
love when there's a female vocalist because it's like I don't even understand how females can go from like because females typically have like a higher voice, like how do you get
Mhm.
it like so low and guttural? That's
Right.
amazing and I have so much respect for it.
Yeah, yeah. She was, yeah, but she was. That was what we were trying to tell her too. We're like, how the heck did you even do that? She said she doesn't know. It just came. She said it seems like there was something that just a different side of her that came out, or something, like something else that was inside of her that just came out. And I was like,
Hmm.
yeah, and anyone in that scene, if you ask anyone in the underground metal scene in the Philippines, they know who she is.
Hmm.
Like she's pretty much that. She's pretty much got that sort of legend status. And we were trying to convince her, hey, wait, you do realize you have sort of like a legendary status. You don't realize that, but you do. And then there's
Hmm.
obviously there were a lot of different bands out there, like that we knew about that were really really cool. There was a band called Il Nomine Patris, which is like
Hmm.
they're also sort of like Christian themed, I guess, in a sense.
Hmm.
They were really cool. Um, and then they are, let me see, what else was there? We were never on the bill with them though, unfortunately.
Hmm.
Um, Divine Sacred Order was my buddy's band as well. They were really
Hmm.
cool. Um, oh God, who else can I talk? Oh, Bad Burn, one of the oldest hardcore bands in the country there. In the country there,
Hmm.
they've been around since like I think I want to say late '90s, but they're still doing
Okay.
it. Yeah, they're still doing it. And it was
That's amazing.
mhm.
I listened to a
Eh,
little bit of your episode when you had Vern on and he was talking about doing
Vernon.
the festival over there. And
Yep.
I just, yeah, I don't know, because I didn't get the opportunity to go to the Philippines, but like that's really cool hearing about it.
Yeah, he had
I didn't know there's like so much of
the
a scene in the Philippines, so that's cool to hear about that.
yeah, he didn't was he decided to end it last year because it wasn't really making much
Okay.
money. Yeah, it really wasn't making much
Mm.
money. Despite the turnout always being, well, in my opinion, was huge. It was really big. The last one I went to, the only one that I ever went to, was in 2012 when August Burns Red, which is another Christian band there. You know,
Hey, I love them.
yep, when they were there, and I was pretty much almost front row in a sense, except I was not, not in the VIP area, but I was right up against the barricade, you know,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
and so I'm all like, yes,
Getting
especially.
squished by everybody else.
Oh yeah, especially as they're going into the song "Whitewashed." I'm like, yes,
Oh, that's
yes,
the best.
yep. As I'm going into it, and it was so fun, getting to see them at Pulp SummerSlam. But
Mm.
yeah, no, Vernon, I had spoken to him about all these different things too. When I was out there,
Mm.
I met him surprisingly when the band Dying Fetus had come over, the only time they'd ever come over. And me and my guitar player, Roman, from Soul Incinerator, we got there like, was it 6 or 7 hours early? And to
Mm.
the venue, this place, Amaranto Theater. And we weren't sure if we could even get in that early, but the gate was open and we just went inside. We are hanging out outside the venue. And
Mm.
so we're just like, I hope they don't kick us out of here. And then
Mm.
and then Vernon comes up, and then like we see this like sort of like an SUV or something come up, and then I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, is this like an FBI kind of thing going on? What the heck's going on here? We see this big SUV come out. You see these dudes with like long hair coming out, and then you got Vernon and everybody else, and we're just like, oh yeah, we're just here to see Dying Fetus. Is it okay if we hang out here? He's like, yeah, it's fine, And then
That's awesome.
and so we got to meet Sean Beasley, their bass player. Basically, they went inside. You could hear them firing up the equipment, doing some sound check
Mm.
stuff and firing up the boards and everything. And
Mm.
then about 10 minutes later, Sean Beasley comes out to have a cigarette, and then he looks over at us. He's like, "Hey, what's up?" And he comes over and starts talking to us.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're just sitting just talking to him for like, for like 45 minutes or something. Like it was all talking and chilling and hanging out and everything like that. And, he's talking about how, it was their first time in the Philippines. He told us about how they got held up in Japan for some sort of a thing. They were like in the airport for over 25 hours or something like that, or 20 hours. Like I guess their show
Mm.
got canceled or something, or some kind of thing got happened with their visas or something. I can't quite remember what happened there in
Oh,
Japan.
wow.
Yeah, and he said something about how they ended up sleeping in the airport. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And then they said they were just kind of like, why did you get, to get to the Philippines where they could at least kind of do that, and because they'd never been there. And as soon as they arrived, they had him take apart his bass. The Philippines,
Mm.
they were showing pictures. Like
No.
he had to take his bass apart, and they had to show him all this. There's nothing in here. He had to take it all apart and everything
Yeah,
like that. And then,
that
but then
would
when they finally got,
suck.
Oh yeah. And then when they finally got to the
Because
venue,
you put so much love
obviously.
into it, you don't want to have to take it apart and put it back together.
Right, yeah. But it was but they what they did, they got there and they did it and it was a really fun
Mm,
show. But that was what I'm saying. Like when you said you saw the thing with Vernon, yeah, that actually got a
mm,
lot of views, especially from the Filipino metal community,
mm,
because a lot of them know who he is, and a lot of them,
mm,
had really been, a lot of the good bands have been brought over by his production company. You know what I mean?
mm,
I mean, obviously they had Belphegor, like in recent years. They had,
mm.
God, what was it? Flesh God Apocalypse. They had all those guys come out there.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was like
That's some big bands that he got out there. Like that's because
he
I
got
feel like
Slayer.
it's such a bummer. That's incredible. Like it's such a bummer though, like if he had to stop doing it. But like I just feel
Mhm.
like it's yeah, I feel like ever since COVID, like just costs of everything's gone up and especially like
Mhm.
travel. Like my heart goes out to bands like who are trying to tour, but just it's so much more expensive to do it now. Like
Yo.
one of my friends, Phil King, he's putting on this Christian metal festival in Ohio, like kind of like loosely Sandusky area, like between Toledo and Cleveland on the north
Huh?
end of Ohio. It's called Undead Revival. And he's got bands
Uh-huh.
like I think The Protest is headlining it, and he's got bands like E-Ray, Symphony in Peril, No
Uh-huh.
Treaty's gonna be there. So that's gonna be October 11th this year. And but he's just doing it for the love of it and he's like paying for all these bands to come out there. I think he's like hoping to break even.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's just I feel like so many people like in the scene like they're doing it for the love of the music and the love of the community. But it's seems like it's so difficult for it to be a financially advantageous
Of
venture for
course.
people, but people are
Well,
doing it
yeah.
for the love of it.
No, I mean, well, I think the only reason to do music, and pretty much in general, you gotta
Mm,
love what you do. And another thing too,
absolutely.
turns out like with, obviously, as you know, with Corn, I'm sure that people know that, Brian had Welch had come from,
Yeah.
years of addiction and all kinds of stuff like that to all of a sudden turning to Christ, which is really cool. Like his story
Mm,
is just freaking, oh my God, I couldn't even believe it how he left Corn because he was really, really kind of all whacked out on drugs all the time. He didn't want to raise his daughter that way. He didn't want her to see all these things
mm,
happening to him all the time. And how he was even baptized in the River Jordan, you know. Oh
mm.
man. I was like,
Yeah.
man. And then the ironic thing about it is, or one of the weirdest things is my wife and I had just come back from the Philippines. We'd only been back in country about maybe 2 or 3 months, and I was working at the airport here in Phoenix as a utility. And obviously I had to go to the bathroom. I was gonna go back out and start doing my stuff. As I'm coming out of the bathroom, who walks in? Head from
Brian Head
Corn.
Welch.
Yep. I look over and I'm like, wait a
What's he
minute.
doing there?
Well, I don't know. I think he has some connections here in Phoenix. I think he lived here for a while, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And then, but I saw him at first. I was like, there's no way that can be him, right? And then, and I waited for a second to see if he came out. I'm like, holy crap, that's Head. I'm like, that's Head. But I didn't want to bother him though. You know what I mean? I didn't because
Mm-mm.
it's he's probably got like a really long flight in front of him and all that stuff. I didn't want to
Mm.
bother him, but I was like, I got a couple other people out with me. I'm like, dude, I'm like, can we confirm this? I'm like, that's Head, isn't it, from Corn? Everybody's like,
Yeah.
yeah, dude, that's Head, man. They're like, that's Head. And I'm like, oh my God, it was like, it was really cool. I didn't expect to
Yeah.
actually see him there. He's just got his little carry-on bag. He's got a little Target bag with him. It's like just walking like
Yeah.
no people really noticed who he was. You know?
Yeah. It's so difficult because it's like you like want to say hi because they're amazing and you've been listening to their music for years. But like,
Mhm.
yeah, you also like don't want they probably get that so often. Like I
Mhm.
feel like that happens with like wrestlers a lot, like just getting ambushed at airports and like I don't know that would be so difficult to be a famous person and like not be
Right.
able to like walk around. So like props to you for like letting him breathe a little bit because he probably gets
Yeah.
swarmed all
Yeah.
the time.
Well, yeah, I didn't want to bother him, but it seemed like anybody else that was around. I think he
Mm,
had like I think that may have been like his manager or something like that, or somebody that was with him. There was another guy that was with him, but
mm,
nobody was really swarming him. So it seems like many people either didn't care or didn't know that it was him. You know what I
yeah.
mean? But you could
Wow.
definitely tell like the teardrop tattoos, the Jesus tattoo on his arm, on his hands.
Mhm.
You could see it. Yeah, it was definitely him. And I was like, wow, dude, this is crazy.
Yeah.
This is going to drop out again in a minute, by the way, but we'll come back in
Okay.
right after this. So yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, it was like really it was really just it was that was really surreal to actually see that. I was like, wow, dude, I got to see Head, and I didn't even like I wasn't even at their concert. I got to see them, you know.
That's amazing. Yeah, corn. That was actually I've loved corn since like junior high or middle school, but that was
Mhm.
actually the first concert that I took my daughter to. I think she was like 3 or 4 at the time. But
Corn.
they headlined one of the dates of incarceration in Mansfield, Ohio, a few years ago.
Uh,
So I got to take my daughter out and we saw, I was like, she was like 3 at the time, so I didn't want to like make her sit all day in the sun. But I took her and we got to see I Prevail, Papa Roach, and Corn. And I'm like, the Bible talks about baptizing the Holy Spirit, but we also had to baptize in the metal a little bit there as well.
exactly. Hmm. Oh yeah. Oh man, it's like yeah, that's. I've been trying to get my boys into it a little bit, but I they don't seem to be really into that. As I was telling Paul before the before we kind of took this a little bit of a break, was that I've been trying to get my boys into this kind of stuff. However, I don't really, expect them to be, you know what I mean? I want them to kind of experience their own thing, you know what I mean? Their own kind of interests and whatnot. So, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
just that thing. That was kind of the little thing.
So I kind of have a question for you off of that.
Sure.
So I don't know how old your kids are, but mine are 3 and 7.
Mhm.
And what I've noticed, and maybe this is really weird, but what I've noticed is that whatever I listened to the most when my wife was pregnant with them, that kind of still is like what they like better when I play in the car. So, like my daughter, I was listening to a lot of like metal music when my wife was pregnant with her. She's more open to when I play metal in the car. She especially likes when I have like A Day to Remember, she likes pretty well. But then my son, I was listening to mostly like Joe Rogan podcasts because he was like born during the pandemic and I was like getting into all my political podcasts.
Mhm.
And he likes like more like podcast type of stuff now. Do you feel like that's the same way? Because I feel like my kids kind of like what they heard in utero, which is like wild to me. But they say kids
Mhm.
can hear like when they're in the womb still. Have you noticed
Right.
that at all with yours?
Kind of. I mean, they're more into like, well, because I have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. So,
Okay.
yeah, they're more into just like a lot of the kids' music still,
Hmm.
Blippy and all that
My
stuff.
son loves Blippi. He's obsessed with
Yeah.
him.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And
And then he
apparently
got
there's
into
3 of
Cocomelon a little bit more too, and I'm just like, I could do Blippi because like Blippi has like a storyline.
them.
Cocomelon, it's just like kids crack cocaine or something.
Pretty much. Yeah. But there's also another bit of a story behind that too with the Coco Melon thing.
Hmm.
Um, there's 3 of the characters were created I don't know if you heard about Chris Watts. Okay, the guy who basically killed his wife and his 2 daughters.
Oh,
He's in federal prison for the rest of his life, of course. But
as he
yeah,
should be.
there's a big documentary about him on Netflix. So yeah, because he killed his wife and his daughters and their unborn son apparently. Coco Melon in tribute named Cece, Nico, and I can't remember what the other characters are, what the other character is after his daughters and the unborn son.
Really? Did the guy who created the Cocomelon characters like know that family personally, or he just like knew from the story?
I think he heard about it from the story, yeah, and then they just from what I heard is they as tribute named some of the characters after those kids.
Yeah. That's a really
But
sweet tribute.
apparently,
That's a heartbreaking story, but that's a really sweet tribute, actually. It's gonna make me
hmm,
go a little lighter on Cocomelon now. That's a really sweet
right.
tribute.
Well, yeah, because and the way that the savage way that he did that to his daughters was messed up. Basically, one of his daughters was conscious when he actually dumped her in an oil well. Yep. And because there was
That's terrible.
because there was so much of these,
Was it full of oil and she
it
just
was
drowned
oil.
in it, or
It
was it
was
just an
oil.
empty drum and she starved?
No, it was full of oil. Yeah, and it was
That's disgusting.
yeah. So he stored all of them, I think, in that if I'm not mistaken. And because of that, because of all the chemicals and all the toxins and the stuff that were in their bodies, they had to be buried double deep, like 12 feet down.
Oh,
Something like that, yeah. And it was, if I remember that correctly, yeah. And I was just like, wow, dude, when I heard that, you know,
yeah. That's
it
heartbreaking.
it is very, very much so. I just, that was one of those things that I just, when you mentioned Coco Melon, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent on that, but it was just kind of like,
Oh no, you're good.
I just wanted to make sure that, they have the Coco Melon thing has their own, has their own tribute to these poor little
Yeah.
girls who may they rest in peace and be in the arms of God for sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, but it's
Yeah.
like, but yeah,
No, my son, he's 3 and he got diagnosed with a speech disorder. So
uh-huh,
really the more the reason why I was like hesitant about Cocomelon. So my son has a speech disorder, so he's in speech therapy with his local school district,
uh-huh,
and he's getting speech therapy just to help with like enunciation and pronunciation of words. And so whenever he watches like whether it's Cocomelon or like whatever else that like has babies in it, he like starts to like give up on his like effort to pronounce words as they should be
okay.
pronounced. That's why we have like a more of a no Cocomelon in the house, but I might have to let him watch some now because that's a really sweet tribute that they're doing.
It is, yeah, it's really nice. But of course, my oldest son now is actually into garbage trucks. He's in some sort of weird garbage truck phase. So he
Yeah.
has like, so he's asking for like garbage truck toys and stuff like that now. So that's pretty cool. But he
Yeah.
also asks me, he'll also ask me randomly. Actually, what happened was a couple months ago, where was it? Yeah, we were just randomly just watching TV, and then my son said that he wanted to play guitar with me. And I was like,
That's
wow,
amazing.
okay. I was like, okay. I kind of looked over like this. I kind of started crying a little bit. I kind of like started to tear up a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I'm immediately like, okay, I can help you with that. I can help you with that.
Yeah.
And I went and grabbed my,
That had to
and
be
then
an awesome moment.
oh yeah. But then the other part that really kind of put the icing on the cake that made me kind of cry a little bit was that, instead of choosing one of my other bases, right? One of my newer ones, he went
Hmm.
directly for the original. Doesn't work. It doesn't work. Like
Hmm.
the pickups are burned out on it, everything like that. It hasn't worked in years. However, he goes for that one. I'm gonna
Hmm.
play this one. He picks up my big black bass, and he's like, I want to play this one. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, wow, he wants to do this. I'm like, and he picked up the original. He picked up the OG, the one that I learned on, the one that I taught myself that entire first Slipknot album on, the one that I taught myself all the
Hmm.
Fear Factory songs on. Oh my God. I'm like, that's the one out of all the ones in my arsenal. He picked that. He picked that. I was like,
That
wow,
is so
dude,
cool.
you know? And then it was, that really kind of made me feel happy because I was like, oh my God, my son grabbed the original bass. He grabbed my original. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
because that's what you learned on. That's so cool. How much
Mhm.
work was it to get it put back together then in working condition?
It doesn't work anymore. I don't have
Oh,
the money
okay.
to
It's
I don't
like
have the
done,
money
done.
to.
There's no saving it.
Well, no, well, I mean, I'm going to save it eventually. You know what I mean? It's just that it's
Okay.
like I just don't have the money or the time right now to be able to, to
Yeah,
gut it and put all the new stuff in it and put brand new pickups in it and, new hardware,
I gotcha.
which I'm planning on eventually, and maybe if he wants it when he gets older, maybe give it to him if he wants it. But
Hmm.
but that's the one that when I was in San Diego had actually drawn a huge crowd for me when I was doing open mic nights. I moved to San Diego when I got out of high school in 2003. I lived with my
Hmm.
dad and his partner and try it out. Yes, my dad's gay. Anyway, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But I mean, it was like, but I wanted to try it out. I wanted to forego college for about a year because I just wanted to kind of take a break from school, for a little
Hmm.
bit and just kind of see, try to get my feet wet in California where my dad was living at the time. And I went and moved to San Diego that summer.
Hmm.
And I remember that I brought my bass with me, of course. I always had it with me, and this would drive my dad nuts, even in high school when we visit him. I'd make sure that I actually had my bass checked in with me somewhere. They put it in a little closet on the plane, you know.
Hmm.
And then I would also make sure that it was always with me 100%. Even if I go to the bathroom, I have it in there. I put it up against the stall or put it up against the wall there with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even in hotel rooms, I'd have it on the bed next to me or like right next to me on the little nightstand, next to the nightstand. So
Hey,
that
you
like,
got
if
to
I wake
take
up.
care of it.
Well, yeah, it's like if I wake up in the middle of the night and I have a riff, I just pick up my bass and just kind of play these little
Hmm.
riffs until I was like, okay, there it is, there it is, there it is, and then boom, put it back down.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that was, I don't do that much anymore, but unfortunately, but
Hmm.
but
It's harder once you have kids. Like it
yeah,
just
it is, it
it
is.
really changes the like I used to be such a night owl, and then
uh,
I mean my wife's gonna probably listen to this and think you never woke up with the kids. I always woke up with the kids. So
right?
shout out to Michaela. You did do so much more than me, but I a couple
Uh,
times I heard she says I'm a very deep sleeper. Probably true. I feel like I probably also lost at least a little bit of hearing just from
uh-huh.
listening to music and also from my school bus engine. But that said, it is different when you have kids, like because you have to like manage your sleep so much more. Like one of my friends just had a baby and he's going to learn very quickly. Like you have to budget your sleep. Like when you have a chance available, you better take
Wait.
it because you don't know
Yep.
when that chance is coming back.
Yep, exactly. Well, the same thing happens whenever my 2-year-old he'll be napping, right? Like I'll get back from doing a
Mm,
DoorDash run. I don't have a job right now, obviously, unfortunately,
mm,
but I'll get one soon.
mm.
And then what happened is, I came back from a Door. I'll come back from like doing some DoorDash runs or something like that to kind of help supplement the income. And then, my wife's like, yeah, he's still sleeping, and all of a sudden, as soon as I'm ready and I'm showered, I'm ready to go. As soon as I'm getting ready to lay down, he wakes up. I'm like every single time, like I'm already like laying down on the couch like this. My wife's already in here because she's sleeping, getting ready to go to work, and so I don't
They
want to bother
know.
her. Yeah, so like I don't want to bother her with it. And then, the second I lay down on the couch, lay down, I'm already halfway asleep. I'm like, okay. I'm like just like clockwork, just like clockwork
Yeah.
every single time. And it was, that's how it happens. I don't really mind it, to
Mm,
be honest. But sometimes all of a sudden I'm like, well, I actually went and took a full nap and he didn't cry. And sometimes that happens. But then it's like,
yeah.
and I've been telling my friends too that, being a diehard metalhead all my life, I think being a
Mm.
dad is probably the most metal thing that's ever happened to me. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I told that, like once my sons were born, I'm like, man, this is probably the most metal thing that's ever happened.
Well, even just literally, like from I don't know how your kids were born, but my wife had a C-section for both of hers, and
Both,
I
yeah,
am
for
like
us.
the most okay. I'm the most squeamish person when it comes to blood or needles or anything. I could, shout out to all the paramedics and nurses and doctors. Like I could never, like, just. I mean, honestly, that's probably part of the reason why I don't have any tattoos. I don't have a religious objection to it, but just the idea of getting poked with a needle, not just once for a flu shot, but over and over again. Like I'm so squeamish for all that type of stuff. So when my wife was having the C-sections, they wanted me to come into the operating room and watch. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm about to pass out, and you guys are
Yep.
gonna have to take care of me
Yep.
too.
Yep. That actually happened. Yeah, like I was present for the birth of both my sons actually, and there. Thankfully, I didn't really see anything because they obviously had like draped over since my wife was doing the C-section.
Mm,
So it was like up to about here to her chest. You could see it's her hanging out on the other side, and then the doctors are doing their thing on the other side. So I couldn't
mm.
see anything, but it was
My wife, they didn't. Thank God they didn't give it to her. And pulled. She was like, I want to see how they move my intestines out of the way and get my kid out. Like how could I can't watch you get operated on? How could you watch yourself get operated on? But she's just
right.
like she always has loved like Grey's Anatomy and like all these
Oh God.
hospital shows.
Yeah.
She's just
Mhm.
super into and she works at a hospital now. So like no
Yeah.
wonder, but that's how God made us all unique.
Well, that was actually my mom was a nurse, and so that was why I asked her because like even when she'd see a little bit of blood, like if I had a cut on my hand or something like that, and I'm
Mm,
all grossed out and upset. My mom's like, "Oh, you're fine. Don't even worry about it." I'm like, "What? You're not even scared of blood?" She's like, "Look at my job." She's like, "I'm a surgical nurse." She's like, "I hold chest clamps open for like for hours and stuff like that." She's like, I've seen all this stuff. I'm like, "But for some and then I shot back at her. I'm like, "But for some strange reason, horror movie blood scares you." And she said, "Yeah, it does." I was like, "Oh, what the heck?" I'm like, "Well, that's fake
yeah,
blood. You're seeing real blood." I'm like, "Horror movies, that stuff can never actually happen that way." You
yeah,
know what I mean? It was like,
yeah.
but she said for some strange reason it was always like a horror movie blood, like like the
Huh.
gore scenes from the horror movies always like bothered my mom, even though she was a
Well,
surgical nurse. And I'm like, you've seen way worse than that. You've seen like
yeah,
gashes. You've seen like
yeah.
open.
Well, don't ever take her to see Ice Nine Kills then, because she would probably faint.
Well, my mom? No, well, my mom passed away actually in
Oh, I'm
2015,
sorry.
but it's all good.
Okay.
But surprisingly, she was the one who, I didn't know, like for years, I thought she was totally opposed to me playing music. And it turns out to be anything but. I didn't know
Hmm.
this. 97, right? This goes to show how old I am. Um, in
Hmm.
97, she,
Hey, you're only a few years older than me.
there you go. But it was like in 97, she was trying to, my buddy and I, we were still like maybe 13, 14. And she was like, we were wanting to go to a concert. We originally wanted to see Green Day, right? But
Hmm.
then but that didn't pan out because I think the show was
Hmm.
sold out, if I'm not mistaken. And then we had this little catalog. This was back in the 90s when they still had like these little things where you'd have these little booklets from like Ticketmaster or whoever it was and it had all the different concerts listed in your area.
Okay,
And
you are definitely older than me because I've only bought
yeah,
tickets on the computer.
yeah, but it was like we would go to the records. We'd actually go to like a record shop that had a Ticketmaster kiosk in it, and we just buy our tickets from there.
Okay.
But yeah, again, that's how old I am. But then what happened was we saw Primus was at the State Theater, which is now the Fillmore in Detroit, and we wanted to go. And my mom got us the tickets for that. And then I got to see, of course, the legend Les Claypool, in
Mm.
the flesh on bass. Oh my God, amazing. And then that was like Limp Bizkit was there. That was when they were first starting out. Fred Durst had like bronchitis, but he still went along with the set. He actually sounded good.
Props to him for still doing it. It's
Hmm.
so cool when you get to like see a band like before they blow up. Like
Yep.
my buddy and I, we saw Whitechapel like at a local club like early days, prostatic fluid asphyxiation days. And like it's so neat when you like see a band when they have like 50 people and then see them later when it's like 10,000.
Like who
Hmm.
incidentally in the 1980s after Cliff Burton died, Cliff Burton from Metallica,
Hmm.
Les Claypool was one of the people who played for who auditioned for Metallica because he was friends with Kirk Hammett.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hmm.
he went to high school with Kirk Hammett. They were in the math class together. He always referred to um was it Kirk Hammett as this little Filipino kid that was in his class,
Hmm.
with the Coke bottle glasses and everything like that. There was this little Filipino kid that was always talking to him about he's going to become a big guitar player. He didn't believe him at first, and then now look at where Kirk is in like the biggest metal band of all time, you know. And
Yeah.
of course Les Claypool now himself is a legend as well. You know what I mean? All of those
Hmm.
guys from like Northern California. But it was like I got to see Primus, I got to see Limp Bizkit in their early days, got to see Power Man 5000 right before they blew up too.
Nice.
They had released their album Mega Kung Fu Radio, I think it was, and then come to find out that Spider, their singer, is Rob Zombie's brother or half brother.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And then that was a fun concert. Then a year later, this is how I figured out that my mom actually really supported my turning into a full-blown metalhead. It was
Hmm.
1998, A Day in the Life, Head PE, and of course Soulfly were all
Okay.
at the State Theater. And me and my buddy, we worshipped that first Soulfly album like we played it until it couldn't play anymore. Like we played
Hmm.
that we spun that CD until you couldn't even make any words out anymore on it. We played it back to front to back every time. Same with
Hmm.
Sepultura, you know. And then we saw Soulfly was going to be at the State Theater. And
Hmm.
then we begged my mom for it. We begged and begged, and we weren't sure if we were even going to get it. And then all of a sudden she comes back, and we're like maybe 14, like I said, 14 years old at this time. And then my mom said, "Hey, can you get my purse? I left something downstairs." I'm like, "Okay." And then she's like, "There's an envelope in that." She's like, "I want you to bring it up here to me." I'm like, "Okay." I bring it up, and then she's like, "Okay, open up the envelope for me." When I brought it up, I'm like, "Okay." And I see it, and there's two Soulfly tickets in there for me and my friend. And then
That's
I was like,
amazing.
"How'd you know?" She's like, I heard you guys talking about. She's like, that was the band you guys were listening to in the car last week, right? I'm like, yeah.
Hmm.
She's like, I heard you guys talking about Soulfly so much. She's like, I wrote it down. She's like, I wrote it down, and then you were saying something. There was a concert that they were going to have. She's like, so I wrote it down, and I went to Ticketmaster and asked if they had tickets for it.
That is so cool of her and so
Yeah,
thoughtful.
yeah. She said that she wrote it down so she could remember the name, and then she went to Ticketmaster to see if they had any tickets available, and she bought them for us.
That is awesome. It's
Yep.
so cool when your parents like support like the stuff that you're into. My
Mhm.
mom was always like pretty cool about like my music taste too, even though like she'll say she has zero interest in it herself. Like going back to like high school, like I was always into like more emo stuff, like The Used and Senses Fail was like my favorite stuff at the time. But I
Uh,
remember she would always drive me to high school because like the Christian high school I went to, it was like 10 minutes this way. And if I were to ride the bus, it was going to be like the opposite direction. So it was like, she might as well just take me to school. So it's so cool that she always took me to school. But she would like let me play Senses Fail and stuff in the car. And I'm just jamming out and she's just rolling her eyes the whole time. That's so cool that your mom got those tickets for you.
yeah, and then what happened was after that, I was in a band called Metabolysis back in high school. We were sort of like, we only did one show, but it was that,
Mm.
but like, and then I didn't know my buddy and a bunch of his bands and a bunch of his friends, they rented out this little township hall, right? So it's out in the middle of nowhere, so we could be as loud as
Mm.
we wanted, right? In this
Nice.
little township hall, and we all show up there, and then we were the first ones to play. We were the first in. And so what happened, and first on the bill, of course, since we were brand new, maybe about 10 minutes into the set, I see a bunch of camera flashes like on my side of the stage or on my side of the little floor thing. And I'm like, why? Why do I keep seeing camera flashes? I look over and there's my mom and her friend in the front. My mom's got a big old smile on her face, watching me going up there, just going off and everything like that, playing. My mom's got a big old smile on her face, and her friend's like sitting there taking pictures. And then I look over to see it again, and they're gone. But I was like, what the heck? Yeah, so my mom had actually drove up there. She drove up there just to see this, to see like, oh my God, my son's actually doing this. You know what I mean? And then
Aw.
yeah, we went and did that. She didn't even tell us she was going to show up. She just showed up and then, went and
Yeah.
play. And then that was it. And then it was, so that was, and then I found out because I got this, there was the Christmas, what, 2002, Christmas of 2002. We went out to California to my grandparents' house for Christmas.
Mm.
And I didn't know what was going on because I still had that black bass, right? And it was really starting to kind of, there's not sounding good and everything like that. I couldn't
Mm.
intonate it for the life of me. And it was
Mm.
just, and I was kind of like, man, I need to get something different, but I never ever mentioned anything about it because I didn't want to put that burden on my mom. She was working and doing all that stuff and always tired. I didn't want to put all that stuff on her. And
Mm.
then my mom, once again, she's like in the guest room. She's like, "There's a box." I'm like, what's inside this box? She's like, bring it outside. I want you to open it. I'm like, okay. I open it and there's a Squire Deluxe Precision bass inside of it.
Wow.
When I brought the box out. And I was like, wait, what? And she's like, well, she's like, yeah, she's like, I called your dad because my dad was there too. They'd been divorced for years, but my
Mm.
dad was there. And she's like, I called your dad and she's like, you didn't know this, but you were downstairs jamming on your bass. She's like, I could hear the amp was shaking the house. I'm like, yeah, of course. And then she's like, I called him and I'm like, Larry, look, she's like, that bass doesn't sound very good. She's like, if he's gonna be a rock star, she's like, he needs to have a bass that sounds really good. And my dad was like,
That's so thoughtful.
my dad's kind of like, are you okay? It's like, are you
Mm.
okay? What's going on? He's like, you're calling me? And he's like, oh, are you okay? What's going on? And then so basically she asked if he could put in on it. Like if he could help her to purchase a brand new bass for me. And then she brought it
Mm.
out to California with her when she flew out there because it was me and my sister had already flown out there because it was
Mm.
my dad's turn for custody at that point. And
Mm.
so we went out there first, and then that's when my mom brought it out with her. And then she's like, yeah, she's like, she's like, that's from me and from your dad. She's like,
Mm.
because we both kind of agreed that if you want to do this and you're serious about this, you need a good bass. But me stupidly sold it like 6 years later.
Oh,
I
why'd
don't
you do that?
I don't know what happened. It's just like for some reason it sounded so good too. It was such a good bass. I love the way it
Mm.
sounded. It was a little heavy. I mean, it was a little on the
Mm.
heavy side. Gave me
Mm.
back problems later on. But no, but it was really heavy. But it was just I remember I don't know what exactly happened. I think maybe I needed more money. I don't remember what happened. There was something kind of thing that happened. I brought it in to the actual place that I bought it from or that my parents bought it from, and they gave me like 150
Mm.
bucks for it or something like that. And then after that, now I'm regretting it. I'm like, man, I shouldn't have sold that bass. I loved that thing. It sounded so good. I used that in a performance in front of my school. As a matter of fact, my high school. I was in a punk band
Okay.
called Probable Cause. And we had like,
Mm.
we were doing some Green Day covers, some Weezer covers and stuff like that. And we even had our own songs. And we were asked to do this little all night lock-in called Bridge Stock, right? We were the band. There was another band that fronted us, and then we played,
Mm.
and I used that bass, and I did not expect it to like boom through those speakers like that. I was like, oh my God, I was like, it was because I tried to use the other one with some of the other songs, and it didn't get the sound I was looking for, and then I hooked that thing up, and I'm
Mm.
like, oh my God, I'm like, it's booming, you can hear it, and that was so I got to use that in front of in front of everybody in my high school, which was really cool.
Mm.
That was a fun gig. I remember that like it was yesterday, even though it was over 20 years ago. You know?
Mm. Man, that's a bummer to have sold it, but like I don't know, I feel like I've been that way with like different like video games and stuff. It's like you don't want to sell something because of like the memory and nostalgia to it, like especially with that being a gift from your parents. But it's like sometimes you do kind of get in the financial position where it's like, yeah, you kind of like have to sell something to make room for the next thing.
Right, exactly. But I was able to get another bass that was sort of similar to it a few years later, in
Hmm.
2012, 2012, from Soul and the band Soul Incinerator. Our other guitar player, Don, like
Hmm.
he was our lead guy, our lead guitar player. One of his side jobs, because he had a regular job too, but his other job is he sells guitars. Like
Oh, okay.
he'll get shipments from like Dean and different guitar companies and stuff like that. He'll sell them. So some of them he'll keep for himself too. But like but most of the time he'll sell a lot of those to guitars. And then I've been looking for another bass because what happened was I have these expensive Spectre basses that I happened to
Hmm.
get. That I was lucky to be able to get. My sister and my brother gave me one for Christmas one year too. They knew that I like Spectre basses and the way it sounds. And
Hmm.
I didn't want to risk bringing that out on gigs all the time because it's like pretty expensive bass. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
A handcrafted bass, as a matter of fact. And I'm like, man, I really feel skeptical about bringing this out here in the Philippines. We're bringing this out to like bars here in the Philippines all the time, and all the sweat and the tears and everything getting onto it. I don't want it to get all to burn out all my electronics because those are expensive. You have to have everything shipped over from the U.S. You know what I mean? And then
Hmm.
so Don looks at me and he's like this. He's like, "Do you need another bass?" I'm like, "Yeah, why?" He's like, "I have one." I'm like, "What do you mean you have one?" And he's like, yeah. He's like, "I just got a new shipment in." He's like, I got a couple bases." He's like, "I'll show you." He's like, I'll show you the pictures of it." He's like, "And just let me
Hmm.
know." He's like, "Let me know." He's like, I'll bring the other. I'll bring this one too." He's like, I'll bring it to the next practice tomorrow." He's like, "I'll let you play it and test it out and everything like that. If you like it, cool. If not, that's cool, right?"
Hmm.
And then it turns out that the very next day, right, I
Hmm.
actually called my mom because I didn't have any money. Obviously, in the Philippines, I'm still a student. I didn't have a job, and then
Hmm.
but I was like, it's like let's say $150 or whatever. It was just like 300 pesos or something like that out there. I can't remember quite what it was, 500 or
Hmm.
something. She's like, okay, and then she gives me that. I get the money from the Western Union, and I go meet up with him at a McDonald's near my house. And he's got this big box with him. He's this really tiny guy. He's got this big ass box with him. And then he opens it up. He's like, test it, man. I did all that. And I'm like, oh my God. And it's one of those things where you pick it up and you
Hmm.
can just tell that this is yours. Like immediately I'm like, this is mine. The second I felt it, I love the way
Hmm.
that I love the maple neck on it. I love the way it felt. I'm like, this is mine. This is mine 100%.
Hmm.
And he gave it to me right up. He gave it to me right away. But then obviously I had to still wait and get the money to be able to pay him for it. And then once I did
Hmm.
pay for it, and then I started using that in every gig, and it felt exactly like the precision bass that I'd sold. So to me, it was kind of like it resurrecting itself. Like, hey, I'm kind of got the spirit of that same precision bass that you had before. The same
Hmm.
feel. It's got exactly the same feel, and except it's got a maple neck on it this time, which really made me feel good. That I was like, oh my God,
Hmm.
man! I feel like I got my P bass back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's cool
You
to like
know?
carry on the legacy of it.
Yep. And and it also looks incredibly vintage the way you look at it. It looks like a vintage bass, even though it's like a 2011 model, but it looks vintage. And if people know
Hmm.
me, I like really vintage gear, or I like things that look vintage because I can't afford the vintage stuff.
Hmm.
So um, but they know me. I like these really old like looking kind of things like that. And that was perfect for me. The way the color scheme, everything. I'm like, oh my God, this looks like it's out of the 70s or something. This is so cool. I love it. I'm like, I love this thing when this thing plays and it booms. It's loud. It's just, oh my God.
That's like another God moment right there.
Yep, exactly. And that was the bass that like became the workhorse. You know what I mean? For the later gigs of
Hmm.
Soul Incinerator, that's the bass that I would throw around. I would just like, I'd be swinging it all over the place on the shows and stuff like that. I'd toss it all
Hmm.
over the place, swing it around like a baseball bat. You know what I mean? And it was
Yeah, yeah.
but it's also kind of heavy too. But it was
Hmm.
but that was the one that I loved the way the maple neck feels, and I love the way like how it sounds with it. It has a brighter sound to it, which is kind of weird
Hmm.
that you would want that kind of sound with a metal thing. But like I don't I
Yeah.
don't I don't dial in the bass very like I don't dial it in low where it's just like, oh, it just sounds like mud. What I do is
Hmm.
I balance the lows and the highs and then put a little bit of mids into it to kind of
Okay.
balance it so it doesn't sound too heavy. It doesn't sound too low and it doesn't sound too high and not too trebly. I do
Hmm.
that. It's a trick that I came up with, or it's actually something a buddy showed me, as a matter of fact, for
Hmm.
like amp settings and whatnot, because he was a guitar player,
Hmm.
but I was trying to set it like a guitar player. But then I also learned later on that it helps because I tend to shred with the guitars. I tend to do like really fast stuff and shred with the guitars, like play almost the same things they're playing in a way, but then
Okay.
accentuating the drums. And so the way that I set my amps makes me like it fits with the way that it fits with the way that I play, basically. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's because I don't want it too muddy and too deep, right? Where I can't get
Yeah,
anything.
yeah.
And I don't want it sounding too high where it's going to sound so like tinny and twangy and all that stuff like that. So I balance it out enough so that I've got enough low, I've got enough high, and I've got enough mid, and I've got enough mids
Hmm.
in it, so that way I can at least get this sort of unique sound that is my own, that I've
Hmm.
always used, and it's always worked in every single thing that I've done, no
Yeah.
matter what tuning I'm in.
Yeah, that's how my buddy Alex was before he passed. The guy I was in the band with, like he was so meticulous about like where even when he like recorded his music, he was so meticulous about like, okay, if the amp's here, like I need to have the microphone like this specific distance, like not even a
Yep.
millimeter off, and not
Uh,
even just like the distance away, but just like even like in the circumference of the amp, like it had to
uh,
be like in this like top left area, like quadrant of where the amp speaker is, and just
right.
this far away, and never touch like when you're over here, because I did the vocals for our band, and he had a bunch of solo stuff too aside from me, but he was like, hey, when you're over here, do not touch my microphone, do not touch my amp because you'll mess it up.
Right.
If you move it, I'll never get it back. And I'm like, well,
Right.
shoot, I better not touch it then.
My sister was also the only other one who knew what my tone was. I originally had
Hmm.
like a 19. I had this really really old PV head before, which I sold to a friend of mine before I left to the Philippines. But hey, it's in good hands, so at least I know I could trust him. My old
That's good.
cabinet too that I sold. But what happened was with that, because sometimes I couldn't find my tone, like I couldn't find it because
Hmm.
sometimes like somebody else would borrow it and then they'd mess up all the settings on it. And then
Hmm.
my sister would come in like whenever I got band practice and I can't find my sound. I'm like, dang, I can't find it. What the heck? She's like, start
Hmm.
playing. She'd come in. It's just out of nowhere. She'd come in the house. She's like, start playing. Like, what do you mean? She's like, just play. I'm like, what do you want me to play? She's like, just play anything. I'm like, okay. And then I see her start. She starts dialing all the knobs up on my phone on my amp, and it was exactly my settings.
Amazing.
Like my sister memorized it. She memorized where all the settings were. She memorized where all the knob positions were and everything like that. And she would
That's
just
so
always do that.
thoughtful.
Yep. My sister like wouldn't know it. She's like, just keep going, just keep going. I'm like, okay. She's like, yeah, just play it. She's like, there it is. She's like, that's it right there.
Hmm.
I was like, what the? I was like, wow. And then she would do it. So every single time, like even if I would play a gig or something like that, like the first gig that I ever played, that's what she was doing. I had her setting up the thing because I was like, you're gonna be able to be the one that finds it. I don't know where to find it because we had this one had like a million knobs on it, and I had no idea what
Yeah.
any of them did. And for
Yeah, it
some
sounds like
reason, my
she could be a
sister,
sound engineer or something because that takes a gift to like know how to
yep.
hone it in just right.
Oh yeah, if she knew exactly where it was. If she knew exactly where it was, where the sweet spot was on that amp, as to how to do
Hmm.
it. And then, that was, and she was, and my sister also was my show buddy for a while too. In high school, we go to like all kinds
Hmm.
of like DIY punk shows and stuff like that, like in churches and different places like that, people's backyards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
My sister was like my concert buddy back then, so we'd always just go to like different shows like over the week. Sometimes we bring some friends with us. You know what I mean? That
Hmm.
was always one of the coolest things about with my sister. All right. So Paul, I definitely do thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Yeah, dude,
And
it was a pleasure. I enjoyed this, man.
definitely. And of
Can
course,
I
you're always
can
welcome.
I
Yeah,
shout out a couple people before we get off?
of course.
So I want to give a shout out to everybody at Christcore Brethren Church in Columbus, Ohio. I also want to give a shout out to our friends at First Heavy Metal Church of Christ in Dayton, Ohio, about an hour west of us. My friend Stephanie with the Holy SHIT podcast that she started. My buddy Phil and his Undead Revival concert that he's doing in October. And then we got a couple people in Christcore who are in different bands. So shout out to the band Servant Leader, Icona Vera, Eden Has Fallen, Luna Falling, Ad of Dreams, Postquam, and Ad Effectum. Shout out to everybody. I didn't want to leave anybody off, so I made a list.
Gotcha. Good stuff, man. All right. And definitely remember also if ever you guys are in the area there, Dayton, wherever you're at there in Ohio, check out Christcore Brethren Church there. Always look for Paul. This guy is definitely very cool. Definitely knows his stuff. I mean, come on. We got to rock for Christ, right? Come on now.
Amen to that. Yeah.
But if you guys are ever in that area, definitely check it out, for sure. And like I said, we all got to rock for Christ. All right, so remember always like and subscribe to our channel. We're on Spotify, we're on YouTube. And again, Paul, you are more than welcome to come back at any time. All right, you guys.
Oh, thank you so much, Colin.
No problem. All right. Good night.